Morning. Neil Francois, morning, sir. Roxanne, morning. Let me just change this setting here. Right, there are my rooms. Indeed, Roxanne, great is the PNM. Arlene Lewis, blessings of the day to you. And I think birthday greetings are in order, Arlene. So, happy birthday to you. And we trust that you would have a very memorable one and enjoyable one, and notwithstanding the fact that it is your birthday, that you've made time to join us. So, yeah. So, with the greetings to you on behalf of all the debunkers and all the supporters of Facts Are Stubborn Things. Pauline Buckmeyer, morning. Rutrude, morning to you. Bonks Up Central Network, morning. Larry McMillan, morning to you, sir. Vienna Palmerswan, morning. Truth Speaker 27. Lenny Ramirez, morning to you. Dwayne Peters, morning, sir. Daniela Williams, morning to you. Lennox Ramdani, morning, sir. Abuta Sampath, morning. David Clark. Roxanne says time for our team song, Sweeping Time. Yes, Roxanne, I agree with you. Time to start the work now. Point Kumana Sharon, morning. Margaret Thomas, morning to you. Kennedy Joseph, morning, sir. Gaylan Jackson, morning. Kenneth Gabriel, Jennifer Nicholas, Karen Spooner, morning. Annette Baird, Juju Bernard, Cyril Mayas, morning, sir. Wazid, morning to you. The Real Raga, morning. Shailen Bodie, Freddie Williams, Felix Hospitalis, Dexter Thwaites, Macaroni Tony, morning to all of you guys. Marissa Guevara Diaz, morning, Marissa. Happy New Year to you as well. Ray. Leon Joseph, morning, sir. Angela Kati. Jennifer Ashby Okoli, morning. Holly Legol, morning, Holly. Marlon McAllister, Lord, morning to you guys. Debian McKnight. Anna Sisnat, morning, Anna. Anna, what's the weather like in Canada? We know it's always cold. I saw Teresa is here. She came in yesterday, I think it was. So she's here for Carnival and to enjoy the warm sun. Patriot, morning. Anon, morning to you. Donna Walcott, morning, Donna. Shelly Benjamin, two we have on Facebook. Joycelyn Smallwhite, morning, Joycelyn. Angela Joseph Richards, morning to you. Istra Blake, morning, Istra. Jonathan Carr, Christopher Siffy, morning. Deanne Charles, morning, Deanne. Eva Smith Spivey, morning. Adriana Alexis, morning to you. Anne-Marie Monteith, morning, Anne-Marie. Roma Roach, Thomas, morning, Roma. Rudolph Barnett, Sarah Richards, DPA, morning to all of you guys. Joy Ragunanan, morning, Joy. Dion Lewis, morning. Good morning to His Excellency. His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Pleasantville, Nigel O'Connor, and First Lady Marissa Kagan. Nigel said he met some of my fans yesterday calling him Mr. President. John Edwards, blessed morning to you as well. Angela Joseph Richards, morning. Christina Lazama Kamau, morning, Christina. Nicola Joseph, morning to you. Marva James, Carol Myers, thank you so much, Carol. Phyllis Antoine, morning. Marilyn Wanza Cloud, Stephen Martel, morning, sir. Gemma, Julie, Cynthia Jackson, morning. Valerie Bowen, morning, Val. Judy Bowen, morning to you. Alison Boyce, morning, Alison. Philomena or Philomen Green, morning. Joycelyn Raghunath Singh, morning to you. Anastasia Jackie, Garth Sloan Seal, morning to all of you guys. Let's see who else. Denise Cummings, morning. Demetri McEwen, morning, folks. Victoria Isidore, morning. Ruth Franton, Claire Carrington. Right, so let me jump into it. It seems that the first leg of the bacchanal is over, and we will call it that. All who wanted general council and general council involvement, and we need to consult with the wider membership and so on. And Dr. Rowley trying to force Stuart Young down people's throat. Well, general council meeting was held yesterday, and of course we know what the outcome was. Interestingly, a lot of the people who were calling for democracy, they put out a whole ad on I-95.5 calling for the return and the preservation of democracy in the PNM and all of that and stuff. So somebody spent a set of money to run that ad because it was running constantly. So I was on the barbershop yesterday and with John Gill, and as John was making the point, the ad is on the log and it had to play. He has no say as much as he might be opposed to it. The people pay the money and it has to be played because the leadership of I-95.5 for them, their number one priority is money. The bills have to pay, salaries have to pay, and therefore, even if they may have some small inclination towards the PNM, money trumps. So, yeah. So those of you who would have heard the ad yesterday, and there's speculation as to who put out the ad, but I don't know for a fact. But anyway, it was to be noted last night that nobody brought a motion to the floor at the General Council for a vote to hold internal elections prior to the general election. Nobody moved a motion on the floor yesterday to have a convention or to initiate any process whatsoever to have the wider membership of the PNM vote for a replacement for Dr. Rowley. All right? Given the fact that Dr. Rowley has not resigned from either of his two positions, at this point in time, there is no vacancy for a prime minister, nor is there a vacancy for a political leader of the PNM because Keith Rowley holds both positions. And as I've had to point out to many people, unless and until Keith Rowley submits a resignation to the president indicating that he no longer wishes to serve as prime minister, he remains prime minister. Unless and until he submits a resignation letter to the party, the General Council of the PNM, indicating that he no longer wishes to stand as political leader, he remains the political leader. No vacancy exists. Now, if anybody questions Dr. Rowley's skills as a political tactician, the last few days definitely ought to have put such concerns to rest. Right? And there is sense, and this, we have trusted Dr. Rowley's better judgment for the past 15 years, almost. 2010 to now, right? And all of a sudden you have people questioning their judgment and suggest that perhaps some people have ulterior motives. Some people find, well, if it is he wants to step down as prime minister, he's supposed to step down as leader too and just go. This is the same man who you all revered for so long and was praising Dr. Rowley this, Dr. Rowley that. And because the man has indicated that he wishes to bring his political career to an end and he wants to go off and enjoy whatever time he has left on earth above ground with his family, some people take issue with that, right? And instead of abiding by the time-tested practice of the PNM that we do not air dirty linen in public, some persons decided to jump on themselves. So if they're leaking stuff to all kind of Tom, Dick, Harry, Jenny, and Jane, they're given lengthy interviews to the media and saying all kind of thing. People putting out ads claiming dictatorship in the PNM and all kind of madness, things that we are not accustomed to. Because doing all of these things cannot be solved in the forum that you're using it. You put out an ad on the radio. That can't solve your problem. You put out, you're given lengthy interviews to the media and saying all kind of things that bring in the party into odium and disrepute. That will not help you. The only place to treat with your concerns is at the General Council. And you had, all these people had opportunity yesterday to do so. Seems they didn't, all of a sudden they didn't want to do it. Nobody wanted to bring a motion to the floor to engage the wider PNM membership to vote on the next leader. That will come. Dr. Rowley has indicated he intends to resign from both positions, but it will not be simultaneous. He will resign from the position of Prime Minister first in a couple months or so, at which time there needs to be a replacement Prime Minister, and it has been agreed that Stuart Young will be that person. Subsequent to that, he will then resign as political leader, but for the time being, he will remain political leader, and with good reason. Of course, we cannot afford, it makes no sense to have a leadership election in an election year or so close to a general election. Because I made the point, I said it yesterday, and I will repeat it, and I have no problem stating that when it comes to campaigning, the PNM is behind. When it comes to campaigning, the PNM is on the back foot with respect to the UNC and other parties. But the PNM has the unique ability to catch up. But we shouldn't be playing catch up. We should either be on a level playing field, or better yet, ahead of the opposition. What has happened over the last few months is that the party, in my estimation, in my view, has allowed too many things to be said by the opposition on the various platforms and meetings. Too much propaganda out there that has grown and has taken root in the minds of the gullible citizens, in the minds of the intellectually lazy citizens who will not want to do their own research, who seem to have a strong appetite for propaganda, right? And because they're not hearing from the party, and they're not hearing anything from the party to debunk what is being said by opposition forces, not just the UNC, but those who are opposed to the PNM generally, the activists of the UNC who have their various platforms and have been saying things. And we're hearing this, but if the PNM not debunking it, people feel that it must be true. And they're running with that. They are running with that. I told you when I went to the bank the other day, and when the announcement was made about Stuart Young being selected to replace Dr. Rowley, and the woman who was sitting next to me, and the nonsense she talking about was Stuart Young's daughter and his stepdaughter and the drugs and whatnot, and how he helped she took to get out of the country and all of this nonsense. You see, it cannot be that we say, oh, that's just stupid talk, I will ignore it. You cannot do that. People need to understand that when you choose to ignore these things and you say, that's propaganda and we'll talk, I'm not going to bother myself with that. You may say you're not going to bother yourself with it because it doesn't warrant a response. But in the absence of a response, people take it as gospel and they're running outside there with it. People are saying, oh, Stuart Young aloof and he antisocial and he's not a man on the ground, and Penny so nice and Penny this and Penny that. On what basis did you come to that conclusion? Have you ever spoken to Stuart Young? Have you ever had any interactions with Stuart Young? Have you ever seen Stuart Young on the ground and how he relates to his supporters and his constituents and so on? There is a reason why in 2022, December the 6th, was it? At the last PNM internal elections, Stuart Young got the second highest number of votes of the 12 contested positions. Because there were 4 positions that were unopposed, if memory serves me correctly, that position of General Secretary, Lady Vice Chairman, PRO, and Youth Officer, right? There's 16 positions on the PNM executive, 12 were under contest, which included political leader, chairman. Stuart Young won the post of chairman. His position was not unopposed. There are at least 2 other persons who were vying for that position. Dr. Rowley got 8,426 votes. Stuart Young got 8,398 votes. So only 26 persons who voted for Dr. Rowley didn't vote for Stuart Young. And it may not necessarily be that they didn't like Stuart Young. It may simply have been that, some people went and they said, well, I only care to vote for the political leader. Yes, everything else, the other position, may really care about. Some people did that. But there is something to be said for the fact that Stuart Young would have gotten so much votes from the wider membership. And when they're doing polling for an election, they don't go and ask everybody, every single voter who you're voting for. They take a sample of the voters. And based on the answers, they are then able to do their extrapolation and so on, and they will make a determination as to the level of support that the particular candidates have. So if we are to use the 8,398 persons who voted for Stuart Young from the PNM membership, and I keep stressing that the only people who could vote for the next leader of the PNM are the members. Being a supporter does not make you a member. There is a process that you need to engage to become a member, which is you need to get an application form, complete it, have a member, somebody who's already a member, endorse you on that form, sign off on the form, and then you submit it, you pay $5 or $10 as the case may be, and your form goes in and it will come before the general council or whoever it is, and then they will approve it, and you become a member, and then I guess the secretariat at Balize House will contact you and take the process from there. albeit that process hasn't really been working as efficiently as it should be. Because I know there are some persons who have reached out to me to indicate to me they submitted their form a long time now, and they haven't heard from Balize House. They don't know what it is going on, and they asked me to look into it, and I did make an attempt, and I too am still waiting for feedback. Because they tell me, okay, they will check into it, they will look into it, and I've not had feedback. All right? I know, morning to Neil, you know, he's in that situation as well. I don't know if they've since contacted him, but there are a lot of persons who are in that, and they need to fix that. If we're going into an election and you're talking about internal election and you want the democratic process to work, we need to clean up the PNM's membership list, right? Clean up the list. And that needs to be done in advance. So persons who know their names should be on the list, and if their names are not there, you give them sufficient time so that they can lodge a complaint and that matter could be cleared up. Or names that shouldn't be there, you fix it, as the case may be. But that is critical. So you can't come and tell me we need to engage the wider membership and the membership must decide on one man, one vote. But the list is not of the best. You need to fix that, right? And whatever is the process, that must be engaged so that persons who are desirous of becoming members can do so in a reasonable time frame. You need to fix that, all right? So whoever is responsible for that, I can't remember who the elections officer is. You all forgive me. I can't remember if it's in that program. I think I'm not too sure, but here, the general secretary has overall responsibility for that, and therefore Mr. Cummings needs to treat with that expeditiously. Just say. But there is merit to Dr. Rowley holding on to the position of political leader, at least for the time being, right? Because that position is a little trickier. And what we need to understand, if you're going into a general election, a critical aspect of a general election campaign is the campaign meetings. And Dr. Rowley, for the past how many years, has been feature speaker at these campaign meetings, right? He's the last to speak. He closes up the whole meeting. After you hear Dr. Rowley, you're good to go. They could have a campaign meeting and Dr. Rowley alone talk, and after that, that's the end of the meeting and people will be content. Now, if it is Dr. Rowley is not the political leader, he's not the prime minister, then it poses a challenge to use Dr. Rowley in the campaign, particularly to be a speaker on the platform. Because you don't want Dr. Rowley, as the former political leader, to be showing up current or the new political leader, which is what would happen. Because people want to hear what Dr. Rowley says. He's an effective speaker. Okay? But if you have a new leader, then that person must be given the opportunity to do what they need to do, right? And to run the campaign as they see fit. And the last thing you want to do as a new leader is that you sit down and you give a speech and everybody, okay, and then Dr. Rowley come and you get a big applause and all of that and standing ovation, and you feeling like a socks. A pair of socks. Yeah. Because you were not as effective. And I don't think Dr. Rowley wants to show up anybody, right? So if that is the case and you have a new leader, not prime minister, two different positions, a new leader going into the election, and it's not so Dr. Rowley is no longer the leader, you're going to have to limit your use of Dr. Rowley on the platform as a speaker, right? Because if the political leader is going to speak last, where do you put Dr. Rowley? You put him as the first speaker? You put him in the middle? You put him just before the political leader? Where you putting him? That is the question that needs to be asked, right? So you can't start off your meeting with a powerful speaker and then after that everybody come lackluster. Right, and you're waiting. You sit down there only out of courtesy. You need to have a powerful speaker going forward, right? So these are things that need to be taken into consideration. So it's a possibility that Dr. Rowley would be leading the party into the general election, albeit not in the capacity of prime minister, but as political leader. And we could work with that. We could work with that. And there are persons who are saying, well, he should go now. If he say he's going to resign, why wait? He should do it now. Because unlike his predecessor, he is not prepared to leave a pile of work for whoever is coming after him, in this case, Stuart Young, to have to do. Because remember, Dr. Rowley told us that when he came in as prime minister, he met files on his desk so high, requiring signatures of the prime minister. Some of these documents were more than 2 years old. And one wonders what Prasad Bisasa was doing, that she didn't have the time to do it. Simply to sign it. And well, I guess, we see now, she don't read nothing either. Even as opposition leader, she has a small team according to Munila, working out of the office of the leader of the opposition, who reads his stuff for her, they will vet it and whatever, and then prepare it for her signature. Because if she had read the CV of the now chairman of the Police Service Commission, she would have seen where the man indicated that he was a member of the EBC, a commissioner on the board of the EBC. So clearly she didn't read it. So she has continued in that vein that she don't read document. I'd like too much reading to do. She don't have time for that. Right? And she had no problem leaving a pile of work for her successor to do. Or maybe she thought she would have won a second term. Well, then the second term I will deal with that. Dr. Ori ain't taking them chances. So whatever he could clear up, as he said, there are certain things that he could do without difficulty that may not be as simple for who is coming after him. And so the difficult stuff that is there, he will treat with that. And then, as far as possible, leave a clean slate for Stuart Young to inherit. No problem with that. So there is that. And then the infighting that could probably take place. Because, and again, you have to give kudos to Dr. Rowley, right? I am sure he would have sat down months and thought about these things, thought about all the different scenarios and what could happen and what he needs to do to counter those scenarios and to ensure that this transition is as smooth as possible without any fallout. And I'm certain that one of his considerations, and perhaps the reason why he may have, I don't know, I'm just speculating, why he may have suggested or recommended that the convention on the internal election last year, which was for 12 out of 14, 1, 2, 3, political leader, lady vice chair, general secretary, right? So it's those three positions, I think it is. Yeah. So the election last year that was supposed to have happened in November, which was supposed to be for 13 of the 16 positions, perhaps Dr. Rowley thought it best to postpone that so that when we have the next convention and the next election, which will include the post of political leader again, that political leader can have the option or the wherewithal to get a team that he is comfortable with, right? An executive that perhaps he has selected, not an executive that might be the creation of somebody else that may work to undermine his efforts. And so going forward, I would think, or I would expect, that in the next internal election of the PNM, whenever that is, Dr. Rowley mentioned 28th of September, or it could happen before, that whoever intends to contest for the political leader would have a slate, right? Comprising persons who are contesting all of the other positions. So that at the end of the day, when that person becomes leader, the team that they will be working with, the executive team, the central executive, will be persons that they would have handpicked, persons that they are comfortable with and who they want to work with, right? Not somebody or a team that is imposed on them because the election for these persons took place prior, and then you have to wait 2 years before you can get a slate that you are comfortable with, which to me makes sense, right? So, because there was all kind of things said about the last slate and whatnot. A lot of people, Dr. Rowley, in fact, some of you all may recall, at one of the meetings in the campaign for that internal election, he made the point. He said that were it left up to him, had it been left up to him, he would not, there are certain persons contesting who he would not have selected, right? That he would not have picked to be on the executive, which to me speaks volumes, but you had to work with what you have, right? Because it's free and fair, and anybody who wants to throw their hat in the ring could do so. Remember, Dr. Rowley had indicated he was not going to field a slate, but somehow he was co-opted onto a slate. And there are persons on that slate who would have benefited from being on Dr. Rowley's slate. They're not known to the membership, but the membership voted for them because they're on Dr. Rowley's slate. And the membership, those who were inclined so to do, say, well, you know what? If they're on Dr. Rowley's slate, if he good with them, I good with them. Right? If Dr. Rowley picked these persons to be on his slate, well, then he knows I trust his better judgment, and I give my vote to these people. Some people chose not to vote. They just vote for 2 or 3 positions, and they left the others blank because they say, I don't know these people, and, I can't choose. There were persons who said to me, hey, what now? I want to, I like you, I want to vote for, but, so and so is my friend, and I don't tell them I will give them a vote already. I say, okay, nothing wrong with that. I could live with that. No issues. Person said that. And there are persons now who are on the executive who some people feel may not be pulling their weight, but hey, I have no comment on that. Right? When the next internal election comes around later this year, you'll have an opportunity to fix that. If you're so inclined. I'm just making that point. So there are valid reasons for Dr. Oli leading the party to avoid any struggle. And we wait to see. Now, Penny threw her hat in the ring to be the replacement Prime Minister, Ms. Beckles, to be the replacement Prime Minister for Dr. Oli to serve the rest of his term. We wait to see if when the leadership position comes up for contest, if Ms. Beckles will throw her hat in the ring. We'll see. So all who vex, I know they should have picked Penny and Penny. Mrs. Beckles Robinson still has an opportunity to get the leadership. The leadership of the party has not yet been decided. The person who is going to lead the party until such time as they decide, as Dr. Oli is doing now, to step down, that aspect of the thing has not yet happened and will happen sometime later on this year. So fear not, let not your heart be troubled, and all who vex and who Penny better and Penny nice and Penny lovable and Penny is more down to earth and all of that. Okay, and you supporting Penny, nothing wrong with that. Mrs. Beckles Robinson will have her time later on this year. So don't worry, your candidate has not yet lost the opportunity. Once Dr. Oli indicates to the General Council that he is resigning as Prime Minister, as Jennifer Baptiste Primus said last night, then that will trigger the General Council to do what they need to do to initiate the process to elect a new leader. And all who have aspirations to fill that position can come forward, whether it's Stuart Young, whether it's Penny Beckles, whether it's Amory Brown, as some people want, whether it's Foster Cummings, whoever, all of them will have an opportunity in a few months to contest the position. And if they win and they become leader, Stuart Young's term as Prime Minister ends. Well, it will end anyway around noon on the Wednesday after the general election, when the new Prime Minister will be sworn in, whoever that person is. All right? But once a new leader is selected, and the leader is a member of the lower house, House of Representatives, how many other members of because we don't know what the final figure will be. Right now is 21. It was 22, but for the loss of Lisa Morris Julian, how many? If 22 again, if it work out to 24, or how much ever it is, 21, whatever the final figure is, those 20, how much ever people will decide among themselves who they're supporting to be Prime Minister. Whether it is the leader, or if it's not the leader, they don't have to choose the leader. They could choose somebody else. But that will be entirely up to them to decide, right? So I just wanted to make that clear for persons who concern and talking about things and they're trying to force Stuart Young down the people's truth. Stuart Young, look at it from this perspective. Stuart Young, he's not acting. He will be the substantive Prime Minister. But look at it this way. Dr. Oli put Stuart Young to act, and he's going to act until the general election, at least. That's how it is. Right? But he is not the leader. Dr. Oli remains the political leader. So let's just get that out of the way one time. So all who want to vex and me voting and I voting and this and that, there is no need for that. Dr. Oli is still your leader. But there are those who are calling on him to leave altogether, who are saying, don't give up the post of Prime Minister and still hold on to political leader. Make it a clean sweep. Right out into the sunset one time. These are people who were at one time supporting Dr. Oli strong, and now they're calling for him to leave. But he will leave on his own time. They can't force him to do that. Right? Now, again, I listened to Jennifer Baptiste Primus last night. And I just want to say to Ms. Baptiste Primus, no comment is an answer. And nobody can fault you for saying no comment, because that's what everybody else has been saying. But when you want to give a whole detailed interview and then you're saying certain things off the cuff at the moment without much thought, so people listen to what you say and they analyze, and then they go and they run on social media and say all kind of thing. So in the interview that she did last night when she came out, one of the things she said, well, Akash, you got married the other day and you don't have any children yet. And the other person, she said, but you have children. And we negotiate and we compromise all the time with our children. And you tell them, if you do this, then they will get that. And if they do this and whatnot and stuff. And it gives the impression that there was some kind of horse trading taking place at the General Council meeting. So people say, well, if you do this, and they tell the Prime Minister, well, okay, we will allow it to stay, but if you do this and if you do that. No. That was totally unnecessary. There's a reason why General Council meeting is closed door it's open only to those persons who are authorized to be in there. And what is said in the General Council is supposed to be, what happens in General Council is supposed to be private. You don't come outside and then give hints and, well, this happened and that happened. No, you're not supposed to do that. Because I read in some comments right after, under the same video with Jennifer Baptiste Primus, people saying, well, you had to read between the lines, because I hear she say, it's like, what happened in General Council is like when you're dealing with your children and you had a compromise, and if you do this, you will do that. And people don't start to speculate already. But all of that speculation did not have happened if you had simply said it was an amicable process. Concerns were raised. I registered my concerns, and now we have arrived at a conclusion or an agreement, and therefore we will see how things proceed from here. That's all I have to say. Good night. Have a good night, ladies and gentlemen. But I had to go and fill a whole set of questions and say all kind of thing for the media to put their own spin on it. That was the only interview I saw last night that has the potential to continue to drag this thing out. Then all I had to say a few words and just leave. So now that opens up a whole other can of worms, because you will have people who will say, so when they, what the media loves to do, they go run and call Hamid Ghani and Vishnu Raghunath and Indira Rampasad and Indira Sejiwan and all of them to ask them, well, what do you make of Jennifer Baptiste Primus' statement that that suggests that there might have been some kind of negotiation and whatnot, and then they will come and throw a whole setup. Because I heard, I think it was on Friday or Tuesday, Friday I think it was, one of those days, where they interviewed Vishnu Raghunath, or Vishnu, whatever the hell his name is. I ain't Godfather and I wasn't in the christening. And he says, well, the 9 votes for Penny and Dr. Rowley's and the support for Stuart Young might be a continued vendetta against Penny Beckles from 2014 when she challenged Dr. Rowley for the leadership. And so that vendetta. What vendetta? What vendetta? Dr. Rowley made Penny Beckles, when he became Prime Minister, he made Penny Beckles Trinidad and Tobago's permanent representative to the United Nations. She was in New York for 5 years, right? As this country's permanent representative. And from all that I saw with all of the things that she posted, she seemed to be very happy with that posting. She enjoyed it tremendously. You saw her posting pictures and videos with her playing football with her diplomatic colleagues from around the world and attending meetings and all of these things. And it seemed that Mrs. Beckles-Robinson enjoyed that posting, which Dr. Rowley gave her. And then in 2020, he recalled her to come back and be part of his cabinet and first made her the Minister of Housing, if memory serves me correctly, and then she became Minister of Planning. That is a vendetta? Well, if that is vendetta, I want to be a part of that vendetta. I wish somebody could have a vendetta against me like that. But this is the nonsense that people like Vishnu Raghunath and them, who are supposed to be men of letters and supposed to be these analysts and could look at the situation and make a pronouncement, and you come in to talk about vendetta. What vendetta? That is utter rubbish. You think Dr. Rowley knew that Ms. Beckles-Robinson was going to throw her hat in the ring? The man made the announcement that he's stepping down as Prime Minister and somebody has to replace him. There was a straw poll. You can't force a person to be a nominee. My understanding of the process is somebody will nominate you, and if it is that you wish to serve, you will say, yes, I accept the nomination. If you don't wish to serve, you say, no, I don't accept the nomination. I don't think Dr. Rowley said, everybody who want to be Prime Minister, raise all your hand. I don't think that's how it went. The correct process is you open the floor for nominations. I nominate Stuart Young. I second the nomination. Mr. Young, do you accept nomination? Yes, I do. All right. Do we have any other nominations? It happens all the time at the PNM's constituency conferences. The few that I have attended, that is how the processes go. We open the floor. Do we have any other nominations? Yes, I nominate Penelope Beckles. All right, I second nomination. Mrs. Beckles Robinson, do you accept nomination? Yes, I do. Do we have any other nominations? Mr. Chair, I move that we now close the meeting for nominations. All right, we move a motion. A motion has been raised that we now move to close the floor with respect to further nominations. I endorse. I second. Okay, the floor is now closed. These are the two nominees, Stuart Young and Penelope Beckles. We hand out the ballot papers, and everybody, you vote. You put it in. You put your vote in the box, right? And then you have the independent person who I understand in this case would have been Ansel Dennis, and you check the ballots. 1 for Stuart Young, 2 for Stuart Young, 1 Penny Beckles, 1 Stuart Young. At the end of the count, 11-9. Right? Do we have the permission of the members to destroy the ballots? Yes. Ballots are destroyed. You inform the meeting. The results of the count are 11 votes in favor of Stuart Young, 9 votes in favor of Penny Beckles. Everybody congratulates Stuarty. Right, well done, ting. The 9 persons who voted for Stuart Young, for Penny Beckles, they say, well, okay, this is what. Whoever won, everybody agrees to support that person. Regardless of the fact they didn't vote for them, once they win, everybody throws their support behind that one person. And we then do up the document outlining what took place and the vote count and so on. And that would form part of what is sent to the president. But unless and until such time as Dr. Rowley resigns as Prime Minister, that document is null and void and of no effect. It will only come into force once Dr. Rowley resigns. Then the letter will be prepared for the 21 members to indicate that they are in full support of Stuart Young. So as Foster Cummings and they would have said last night, and Mr. Young, what was signed was not a letter by 21 persons. What was signed was a document outlining what took place in Tobago, the results of the vote count, and everybody signed to that as having taken place. So it's basically like minutes of that meeting. But the document, where all 21 persons were signed, indicating their support on Stuart Young to be Prime Minister, that will be done up subsequently, and I imagine would accompany the document that was signed yesterday or whenever to go to the president, so that she can now be satisfied to appoint Stuart Young as the substantive Prime Minister, not acting substantive Prime Minister, which, as I told you, Prasad Bisesa has an issue with, because she's saying that even if Stuart Young serves as Prime Minister for even one day, that he would be entitled to a prime ministerial pension for the rest of his life. And unlike the ordinary parliamentarian who has to wait until age 55 to start collecting a pension, the Prime Minister does not have to do so, or the former Prime Minister does not have to wait until 55. That once they demit office as Prime Minister, they are entitled to start receiving the prime ministerial pension. And she's concerned about the public purse, because that means Stuart Young will, at the current salary, that Stuart Young will be receiving almost $1 million a year as former Prime Minister. Well, he will not be receiving $1 million a year, because he has to pay tax on that. The only office holders who pay no tax are the president, and of course the former president, judges of the High Court. They don't pay taxes, income tax. All other office holders pay income tax. So Stuart Young, contrary to what she's saying, he'll be receiving $1 million and is a burden to the taxpayers. 25% of that money will be going back to the taxpayers in the form of income taxes. All right? And I am certain Stuart Young is a young man. So even if he demits office as Prime Minister, he will still continue, once he wins his seat, to be a member of Parliament. And when he decides to give up being a member of Parliament, he could go back to private practice or do whatever it is that he wants to earn an income, which means he will be paying additional taxes as well. So for her to come with that folly, right? But she is not a burden to the taxpayer. But Stuart Young will be a burden to the taxpayer, right? Because she assumes that is a foregone conclusion that she's going to be the next Prime Minister. So it don't make no sense to have Stuart Young giving Stuart Young a kobo sweat for 5-6 months, so that he can receive a lifetime pension. But as I told you a couple of days ago, it would take Stuart Young 6 years receiving pension as Prime Minister, as a former Prime Minister, to earn sufficient money to match up the money that Prasad Bisesa spent on helicopter rides, $6.1 million. She had no concern for the public purse when they decided to give her Minister of Finance $11.625 million to leave his nice cushy job at First Citizens Bank to become the Minister of Finance. Unprecedented and unheard of. No other prime minister in this country's history has ever paid somebody millions of dollars to leave their job to become a minister of finance, when you have people all over the place who are more qualified, tripping over themselves for the opportunity to serve as minister of finance. But she did that. And I hope that her supporters, people like Winston Bachelor, who wouldn't talk about that, we would raise these issues and it would be as if that just flew over his head like one flew over cuckoo's nest. He don't hear when we say these things. So there are no problem with that. Paying a man 11.625, nobody forced him to leave his job. Everybody who decides to come into politics and become a minister had a job before, and they would have had to leave that job to become a minister. Dr. Rowley didn't have to offer any of his ministers money to leave the job and become ministers. But Prasad Bisesa did that. And yet still we are advocating and talking about Rowley say the rich must, nothing wrong with the rich getting richer and the rich must get richer. Always misquoting the prime minister. But she made one man, well, he was already a millionaire because of the monies that the high salary he was receiving. But you made him an even bigger millionaire overnight by giving him all of that money. Because you say if he had stayed in that job, he would have earned this and he would have earned that. Well, okay, minus what he would have earned, minus what he would earn as minister from what he would have earned had he remained and fulfilled his tenure as the CEO of First Citizens, and pay him the difference. Pay him the difference so that way he doesn't lose. But you pay him more than he was entitled to get had he remained at First Citizens, and then made him a minister where he continued to make $40-something thousand a month base salary plus all the other perks, this allowance and that allowance that he would have gotten. So you made him an overnight multi-millionaire. Dr. Rowley didn't make any of his ministers an overnight multi-millionaire. But they're still talking stupidness about Rowley, and Rowley want to make the rich richer. And it's Rowley want to make the rich richer. And I keep saying, you see all those who talking this nonsense about Stuart Young, and now the 1% will take over the party, and the 1% and the 1%. Name for me one thing that Stuart Young has done to benefit the 1% since he has been minister. Just one. Right? I'm making it easy for you. All who like to talk that stupid talk and that propaganda about Stuart Young is 1% and the PNM is 1%. I'm asking you, tell me one thing, and I'm asking, I see Winston Bachelor is on here. Tell me one thing that the PNM has done in the last 9 years exclusively to benefit the 1%. You give me one and I will give you 10 that the UNC did while they were in office. And I could probably give you 5 more that they have done and engaged in while they have been in opposition to benefit the 1%. So let's go. I'm showing it out there, all there who on Facebook, who on YouTube. And if you're on Facebook too, who are supporters of the UNC and always talking that stupidness about Rowley and the 1%. Name one thing for me that Rowley did to benefit the 1%. Anything. Where Winston? Where is Jasodra? Where Chris? Where are you all this morning? Tell us one thing they've done to benefit the 1%. And we know when we say 1%, we're talking about. Right? Don't try to convolute it, as I see some of you all trying to do now, to say, well, the 1% is not just the Syrian Lebanese community, you know. The 1% is like the 1% of the richest people in the country. Miss me with that bullspit. Roxo with that dotishness. Because that is not what you all have been saying. Right? And now, because you all realize, when you really sit down and think about it, the 1% are really benefiting, no, because you know how much money Keith Rowley and them take away from the 1% because they stop renting 1% buildings. Because of that, because the government has moved out of a lot of these 1% owned buildings in Port of Spain, there is now an increase in the what's the word I'm looking for, boy? There are a number of empty buildings, commercial buildings in Port of Spain, right? And because of that increase in inventory of buildings, commercial buildings, property values around Port of Spain have now fallen. As I told you all, I sit on a board of a particular entity. And the entity owns the building that we operate from our headquarters, right? When we took a mortgage just a few years ago, the building was valued at $4.3 million. We recently decided that we wanted to refinance the mortgage because certain things that we want to do, expand the building and whatever else. And our mortgager requested an updated valuation. And the valuation came back, the new valuation, at 2.8. And we were like, well, what's going on here? We had when we took the first mortgage, I said it's 4.2 and now it's 2.8. And we sent the valuation to our mortgage, and they said, well, here what now? what has led to the significant drop in the value of the property. And we reached out to the evaluator who told us it is because you have such significant inventory of commercial buildings in your vicinity, in part because the government is moving out of these buildings and constructing their own facilities or moving into state-owned facilities, that we now have a glut of commercial properties, and that has contributed to the decline in property values. So a lot of these 1%ers who own these buildings have seen significant drop in the value of their buildings, in the value of their financial holdings as a result of right? Because of that. The government then renting. I told you all, it's St. Nicholas, that blue glass building that Customs used to be in the last 8 years, St. Nicholas has not received one penny, not one dime of rent for that building. It's empty. Nobody wants it. The state moved out of it, and nobody from the private sector wants it. So that building just there. It's an asset, but it's an asset that is more of a liability because he has to maintain it in case anybody comes to rent it. But for 8 years, you've not been able to rent it. And that is just one of several buildings around Port of Spain. The building that forms at the corner of Queen and Edward Street that used to house the Board of Inland Revenue headquarters. It now boarded up. It's just there. Nobody using it. It was vandalized the other day by them pipers and stuff, and the owner, whoever the owner is, had to come and put up and block up the windows and doors and stuff. But it is just there. They're no longer collecting any rent. Nobody wants it. Who did that? Keith Rowley did what Kamla Persad-Bissessar could have done, but didn't do between 2010 to 2015, which was to outfit government campus and move Board of Inland Revenue into the multi-story building that they're now occupying on Ajax Street, and not having to pay rent, just pay maintenance. They didn't do that. She didn't do that. Instead, what did she do? She continued to rent from the 1% and renew the leases from the same 1% that today she bad talking. Take a drive around downtown Port of Spain and see how many of these buildings that used to be occupied by ministries and state offices and state departments are no longer occupied. They're just empty with a sign for rent. So who really doing more for the 1%? And I keep telling you all, when Persad-Bissessar is saying that when she comes back, she's going to create all these new ministries, guess what? Should she come back into office, I bet you bottom dollar you're going to see a lot of these buildings that have been empty for the last 8 years will all of a sudden be occupied again by state agencies. And rent being paid, and the 1% will be happy. Yay! But you know, long I thought I would rather sell that building, but Kamla come and she saved me, boy. How many of them took mortgages to construct these buildings? How many of them have mortgages on these buildings? And now the property value has dropped. And they're paying rent, they're paying the mortgage installment, but they're not collecting any rent or any money on these buildings. It's a drain on their pockets. Keith Rowley did that. The leases that were given away in Shagaramas, is not Keith Rowley gave them that? So who really is the 1% government? Who is the one who is refusing to implement property tax so that all of these 1% people could keep more of their money, and money that they should be paying in property tax, whether it be residential or commercial or agricultural or industrial or whatever it is. Kamla is saying zero property tax. So you see the money Keith Rowley would have been taken from you all for all these malls that you have all over the place, and you're collecting tens of millions of dollars a month in rent, and the only thing you're paying is income tax. But don't worry, you have a solution for that too. Instead of you paying 30% income tax on all the money that you're making from Grand Bazaar and Eastgate and Pennywise Plaza and Extra Foods Plaza and Price Plaza and Movie Town, all the money that you're making in rent, and Keith Rowley taking 30% because you're making more than $1 million in profit for the year. Don't worry, when I come in, I will cut that to 18, so you get to keep an additional 12. And you could do what you want with it. If you want to buy another mansion, you could do that. If you want to buy another yacht, you could do that. And if you want to take the money and go to Guyana and open a business, you could do that too. I will help you out. No property tax under me. So you can have your multi-million-dollar house in Federation Park and Goodwood Park and Ellerslie Park and Fairways and Mocha, right? And all of the roads in front of your house and leading to your house is being maintained by the state, but don't worry, you don't have to make any contribution to that through property tax. So you could enjoy your multi-million-dollar house and your son living down the road in another multi-million-dollar house and your daughter living 2 streets down in another multi-million house, and none of you had to pay property tax. But don't worry, the streets will be of the best, because we can't have communities like that looking terrible. And you know why? Because some of our ministers live in these same communities, and we don't want them to have to pay property tax either. So put us back in office, and all the money that Rowley want to take from you, we will ensure you get to keep it. Who really making the rich richer? Who is really 41%? So when all want to come and talk this dotishness about put just Stuart Young is 1% and 1%, I'm still waiting for them to tell me what Stuart Young doing for the 1%. Because Stuart Young is part of the government that increased the tax rate for businesses from 25 to 30, and in some cases from 25 to 35. Stuart Young was a part of that administration. Kamala is the one who's saying she will cut that to 18% and probably lower. But she ain't talking about reducing income tax. She ain't saying for the ordinary man who I so love and care about, who making this small money, I will reduce the income tax rate from 25 to 20. She ain't saying that, you know. You all who need the reduction in the tax, she's not telling all she will do that for you. But she's telling the business community, don't worry, I will cut your tax rate, all you who are already making the millions. So when it is that you see companies like Agostini declare a profit of $384 million, don't complain. Go back, Kamala. So that instead of them having to pay 30% on that, Mr. Mute will only pay 18%. When you see Prestige Holdings, which is KFC and Starbucks and Subway and all of these companies, when you hear they declare profits, and right now Keith Rowley taking 30% from them, and Kamala telling them, don't worry, Christian. Not go cool. Mute. You will only pay 18% under me. So you could get plenty more money. See, buy a lovely new vehicle. I'm gonna say, okay, we see it. We see it. Imposing. I've never seen one like that, another one like that in the country yet. But he probably, under Kamala, he could buy a few more. You know? Yeah. But Rowley is the one who making the 1% richer. And Rowley is the one who put an end to the prisoner transport. That's all he was complaining. The government was paying $80 million a year for to Mr. Michael Aboud. As your chum told us, it wasn't 80 million, but it was a few millions. When was the last time you see all them big truck up and down the road transporting prisoners, and the prisoners and them calling out to you and sweetness when they park up on St. Vincent Street in front of the courthouse? When was the last time you see that? All them trucks now, poor Mr. Aboud, they just park up, they have no use for them. Why? Because Keith Rowley and Faris Al-Rawi decided to put an end to that prisoner transport contract through the implementation of virtual courts. So the prisoners don't need to leave the prison. You just take them into a room and write, and the judge on the screen, and they're on the screen and they talk. Who did that? It started under Pandey. So Pandey started it. Rowley put it on end. Not Kamala. Rowley put it on end. So Mr. Aboud, as I said, all them truck park up somewhere, they are no use, so he had to try to find a way to retrofit it to do something else. But in the meantime, that is money go down the drain. And all the millions that he was collecting to transport prisoners, he ain't getting that again. Keith Rowley did that. So I'm waiting again, I'm looking and I ain't seeing the usual suspects who like to support Prasad Bisesa. Tell me how Keith Rowley helping the 1%. How's Stuart Young doing it? I hear the nonsense they're coming with. Do you think that Venezuela will be Trump's first adventure and TNT will feel the effects? What effects will they feel? I recall Donald Trump saying clearly in his last outing as president, you know, when the Juan Guaido thing, and it was reported that he told his people, you know, he kind of have a deep respect for Maduro because Maduro is a tough man. That's who he like. He like a challenge. He don't like people who like to come and cout out him, Mr. Trump and Mr. Trump, and he don't like soft leaders like that. He like people who he could do battle. That's why he like, as I said before, people like Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un, you know, strong men like that. Viktor Orban, strong men like that. He don't like weaklings and wimps. Ooh, Mr. Trump, how high should we jump? Yes, sir. Yes, master. He not about that. And Nicolas Maduro is prepared to stand up to him. So just remember, wait is Banmena, Trump have 4 years. 4. Maduro was recently sworn in for 6. So after Trump demits office 4 years from now, Maduro will still be there for another 2. And he'll probably end up with another 6. So Trump could do what it is he wants. He could jump high, he could jump low. Okay? But he can't do nothing about Manatee. Manatee gas is our gas. It belongs to us. So it don't matter what Trump do with Venezuela, gas will be coming from Manatee in 2027. Yeah? Trump could jump high, he could jump low, he could do this, he could do that. He can't, there's nothing he could do about manatee. That is our property. So at least that will come on. But depending on what his position is, we might have to wait a little longer for Dragon. Just Dragon. But that's about it. We could wait out the 4 years. Stuart Young is a young man. We could wait. Okay? So all who rejoicing, yes, Trump going after Venezuela, and yeah, Dragon dead, Dragon dead. You all realize how stupid you are? How dotish you are? That for the sake of political expediency, that you all want the country to suffer? That's what they want? You rejoicing in that? Okay, tell us, well, Rowley thing, and he was making this big thing about Dragon, but then Dragon ain't go dance. When the country all talking about they have no forex and we can't get foreign exchange, and you have something like that that could bring significant foreign exchange into the country and ease the strain that we face with respect to the availability of forex. But no, all you're happy because Trump come back and he go in and he could possibly scuttle that, and all you're happy about that, and calling all yourself patriots and all you love this country. No, you don't love the country. You cannot tell me you love the country and you're happy with a development that could result in the Trinidad and Tobago economy not benefiting in the way that it should in 3 years or 2 years, rather than having to wait for 5 or 6 years. That making sense to you? So you happy that you will have to struggle to get US, probably the situation might ease a little bit when Manatee comes on stream, but you will still have to struggle for about another 2 or 3 years, when the problem could be eased significantly in about 3 years. And all they calling all the sub-Trinis, Trinbagonians, rock solid, need to jump on a plane and go so. Go and beg Trump for citizenship. Y'all are not Trinidadians. Wasting time. But anyway, now I know plenty of you like to listen to what the news source. Yeah? News source is all you go to. Anytime you see a notification come up about a live later, we there, all you sharing it, all you, yeah, look. I'm going to read something from news source. Posted 16 hours ago. 20-something people sit down in Tobago and bargained and horse traded over the office of the Prime Minister like it was a commodity for sale. I have to let that sink in. Let me repeat that. 20-something people sit down in Tobago and bargained and horse traded over the office of the Prime Minister like it was a commodity for sale. So apparently this person was there. Right? And she know what happened. Wherever her leaks coming from. And you posted that nonsense. 20 people sit down and bargain and horse traded for. What was the bargaining? What was the horse trading that took place? Yesterday it was reported that Dr. Rowley, in the General Council meeting, stood up and he said, he called on all his other 20 parliamentary colleagues to stand. And he said, if there is any among you, any of you all that I asked to vote for Stuart Young, any of all here free to, don't worry, because most of all here already screened and you have been selected. So we cannot come and unselect you now without good cause or reason. And there is no good cause or reason, right? So you don't have to worry about, oh, yeah, I still have to screen. And if I go against the Prime Minister, then they mightn't pick me. You have already been picked. Most of them. And the 1 or 2 that have not been picked is who will not be returning, like Adrian Leons, Stephen McClatchy, who else? And then, well, Lisa Morris, Julian's seat is vacant. And we have the 2 Diego Martin seat, which is Simon de Nobrega and Stuart Young, both of whom I believe, not Stuart Young, sorry, Coleman, both of whom I believe supported Stuart Young. So there's no concern about any repercussions. When the Prime Minister says, if I ask any Ole here to vote for Stuart Young, remain standing. Everybody sit down. Everybody sat down. The Prime Minister, basically the Prime Minister never asked us to vote for nobody. We voted conscience. He never come and impose on us and say, I supporting Stuart Young, so you had to support Stuart Young. He left it open and people vote. Because if it is that he had imposed himself, 9 people wouldn't have voted for Penny. If he had gone and threatened and say, well, hey, if you don't vote for Stuart Young, I will ensure that you are not selected as a... They weren't afraid. The 9, they weren't afraid to not be screened or not be selected or to lose their ministerial position, those who have ministerial positions. And he stood up and he said, well, look, if it is I force any all, I tell any all to vote for Stuart Young, remain standing. Nobody stood up. If it is that we were reading and hearing about persons saying they don't want to sign and they have concerns, well, if they're brave enough to do that, then they should be brave enough to stand up and say, yes, the Prime Minister told me to vote for Stuart Young. And they didn't. They didn't. Because 9 of them didn't. Which means they clearly, if the Prime Minister told them to vote for Stuart Young and they didn't vote, they afraid Keith Rowley. Because we know who it was, and it was stated who the 9 were. We don't know, it wasn't confirmed. But be that as it may, if they were brave enough to not vote for Stuart Young, if as some people implying Rowley tried to force Stuart down people's throat. Really? When did he do that? When did he do that? How did he do that? So all who complain talking about the General Council and we need to engage the wider membership. Well, the wider membership had an opportunity yesterday through their representatives and nobody moved a motion. Nobody. Coming back to the issue of, so I don't know where it is, news source get this from, horse traded and so on, but somebody sent me a screenshot of a conversation, I think is a Facebook conversation, in which involved Aisha Wells, News Source, and Builder Boys Construction, in which Builder Boys Construction would have asked News Source, who are you supporting or who would you like to see as the next Prime Minister? In which, based on what I saw, the individual indicated that they would like to see Dr. Amory Brown replace Dr. Rowley as Prime Minister, right? Which I'm surprised if that is in fact genuine, because this individual ought to know better. That Amory Brown, though he is a member of Parliament, he is not a member of the lower house. And the Prime Minister can only come from the lower house because it's the elected members of Parliament, not the selected members of Parliament, which Mr. Brown is, right? Because Parliament consists of 2 houses, the lower house and the upper house. Mr. Brown is a member of Parliament in the upper house. He's not a member of the lower house, so he cannot and could not replace Dr. Rowley as Prime Minister. Hence the reason his name is not one called of those who voted for Stuart Young and Penny. He could not vote because he's not an elected member. So he can't tell the president nothing. So his name will not be among the 21 on the document. You have to be a member of the lower house, the House of Representatives, meaning the voters had to vote for you in order for you to be able to serve as a Prime Minister, and she should know that. So I don't know if she's one of those who is advocating, but even if you had an internal election, and Mr. Brown contested an internal election before the general election, and Mr. Brown was elected as the leader, he still could not be the Prime Minister because he's not a member of the lower house. And you should know that. But when you're putting things out there and people don't understand the granular details of how these things work, and they're saying, yeah, it should be Stuart, it should be Amory Brown, I like Amory Brown this and Amory Brown that. Amory Brown cannot. He's not an elected member. And unless and until he becomes an elected member, he cannot be Prime Minister. So get that out of your heads. So he is free to contest whenever, but he cannot be Prime Minister even if he's elected as the political leader. So he needs to throw his hat in the ring for one of the remaining seats. His name was called previously as a possible replacement for Dr. Rowley for Diego Martin West, and I think he would make a fine choice. But he needs to throw his hat in the ring, subject himself to screening, and if he's the best candidate, then he get the work. Simple as that. And then he could be Prime Minister. But until such time as that happens, and he wins the seat, it's important, he has to win the seat at the general election. Until that happens, he cannot be Prime Minister. So let's put that to bed now. So all who like to run to News Source and News Source this and News Source that, once upon a time, I don't know who she followed with, but looking at both her pages, the Rhoda Barrett page and the News Source page, I'm very concerned about some of the things that I've been seeing posting. In fact, I was surprised when I saw someone challenging one of the posts that she put, claiming about horse trading or whatever it is, and talking about they need to follow the democratic process and democracy was subverted and so on. And a gentleman simply asked a simple question, and this individual went off on a tyrant and then tell the man to F off. I was surprised. Really? So you can't win an argument based on fact and based on logic? That you, and more than once, more than once, because the guy continued to engage and he said, I don't understand this type of behavior, why are we getting on? So I just making this simple point and whatnot, and responded to the man and then ended the response again with F off. This is the same news source that some all like to depend on for information and run to. You see? Mouth open, Tory jump out. Showing their true colors. The only time I used to ever listen to that individual is when people listened to some live that she had and they found that what was said was interesting and they send me the link and tell me take a look at that. Or they asked me, did you look at News Source live last night? And I said, no, I didn't. You should take a look at and take a listen. And then I'll listen to maybe 10, 15 minutes. And okay. Okay, just what it is you're saying. I was never really impressed by that individual. And now they've given cause to further not be impressed. Because sometimes I engage people all the time, but you never see me using them kind of words to tell people F off and all them kind of thing. No, that is gutter behavior. When you need to go down to the gutter to defend your position, it says your position might not be on such solid ground. But that's our word to the wise. In today's Express, just show you how these people are blasted, hypocrites. Ralph Maraj, PM's disastrous legacy. Let me just read a little bit. Bear with me. In examining the 10 years of Dr. Keith Rowley as Prime Minister, Dr. Rowley has not been Prime Minister for 10 years, but nevertheless, I have said he is leaving Trinidad and Tobago a near broke, blood-soaked nation. Near broke, but yet still, 2 days ago, it was published that in the Heritage and Stabilization Fund, the current balance in the Heritage and Stabilization Fund has once again crossed the $6 billion mark. Okay? There is more money in the Heritage and Stabilization Fund today than when Kamla Persad-Bissessar left office in 2015. A point that I have had to make over and over to many of the supporters of the UNC. And if you doubt me, all you have smartphones, or most of you, just Google Heritage and Stabilization Fund report 2015, and when it comes up, scroll down to page 11, and you will see right there the amount, 5-point-something billion is what Persad-Bissessar left. Not the 11 and 12 that I see plenty of them posting. I don't know where the hell they get that from. Confusing the reserves with the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. And all of them, whenever it is you see that report come up in the comments, tell us what it was in 2015, how much it was in 2015, and I am only too happy, only dropping it in reply. Page 11, you're welcome. Page 11, page 11. Because since you're too damn lazy to go and use Google or whatever is your search engine of choice, to just go and pull up the report and see, read it. You don't need to read the whole thing, just scroll until you see. Page 11, for the benefit of those of you watching and like to talk that nonsense, Heritage and Stabilization Report 2015, page 11, the information is there. It's not 11 and 12 billion as all they like to claim. So while this clown, this quintessential clown talking about leaving Trinidad and Tobago near broke and blood-soaked, right? But you feel he will publish an article talking about the Heritage and Stabilization Fund, and despite the fact that the government would have made how many withdrawals over the last 9 years, that the fund still has more money in it today than when they came into office in 2015. Still has more money, but he will never write an article about that, right? The Express wouldn't do an editorial about that. They wouldn't put that as a front page story. No, they're not about our life. But I continue. We are now borrowing to boost dwindled foreign reserves, and over 5,000 persons have been murdered in a decade of death in this country, and there is more. So over 5,000 persons have been murdered, according to him, in a decade of death. This is the same man. Nevertheless, I want to show you how much of a hypocrite Ralph Maraj is. This is the same man who a few months ago wrote an article advising Dr. Rowley to call the Prime Minister of Jamaica for advice on how to treat with the crime situation in Trinidad and Tobago. And he was praising up Andrew Holness. But he says here Dr. Rowley has presided over 5,000 persons being murdered in the last decade, whilst Andrew Holness would have presided over almost 15,000 people murdered in the last decade. 3 times that of Dr. Rowley. But this, whatever he is, this lout, wrote an article telling Dr. Rowley to call the man who presided over 15,000 murders, to call he and ask him for advice on how to deal with the crime situation in Trinidad and Tobago, which is 3 times less than what Holness has presided over. But that making sense to him. Rowley is now threatening the stability of the PNM, the political party he has headed since 2010, and which gave him the opportunity to be this country's prime minister for the past 9 years. Right? So you start off by saying, in examining the 10 years of Dr. Rowley as prime minister, but now you're saying that he has been prime minister for 9. Talk about a confused soul. Ralph is suffering from senility, Alzheimer's, in the same year. Do you even reread what you write? Is it 10 or 9, Ralph? Yes, I'm nitpicking because he's an idiot. I continue. Having decided to resign as prime minister, he wants to deny the thousands of PNM members a special convention where they would exercise their democratic right to elect their new political leader to lead the party in the impending general election. Is this how he rewards the party, its members and supporters, for their great love and loyalty? With such contempt, Rowley tried to have his successor determined by the parliamentary caucus, where, in spite of his enormous influence as prime minister and political leader, his candidate Stuart Young won a very narrow 11-9 victory in a straw poll over Penelope Beckles. Former PNM Minister Jennifer Baptiste Primus terms Rowley's approach a manipulation of democracy and demanded the PNM's General Council have the final say on Stuart Young as prime minister. Party founder and elder Ferdy Ferreira agrees and wants adherence to the party's constitutional process in electing a successor. Baptiste Primus also says if Rowley cares about the PNM, he has to step down as political leader since he's not leading the party into the general election. He's not leading the party in the position of prime minister. There's nothing that says he can't lead the party in the position of political leader. But anyway, step aside and allow the party to put in place a new political leader by the end of March. Former PNM ministers Robert Lehunt and Mariano Brown also rejected Rowley's approach. Lehunt says it is morally and ethically wrong to deny the one man, one vote for the office of political leader and by extension prime minister. Whoever emerges out of that process would better unify the party for a general election. Really? That's no one. And now I don't want to read the whole thing. It's a flimsy fig leaf to say the PNM does not hold a convention in an election year when it is the first time a sitting prime minister of the party will resign in an election year. Stuart Young must be very special to Keith Rowley for him to do such violence to the party's constitution and traditions in order to spare his candidate the rigors of a contest for the party's leadership. At the time of writing, the PNM General Council is due to meet when my column's headline would have passed. And for the nation's political stability, I hope they reject Rowley's manipulations and mandate a special convention to elect a new leader by the party's rank and file, who should not be denied their constitutional right on this most critical matter in their party. And here's my warning: if Rowley gets his way, it would be difficult for the PNM to pull back from this fundamentally totalitarian approach he has introduced in the selection of PNM leadership. And I don't need to read more, right? But to highlight the hypocrisy. Darren Marcel, on Monday, on the afternoon drive on I-95.5 on a Monday is Ralph Maraj and Darren Marcel, right? Darren raised this issue last week, Monday, coming on the heels of the announcement the Friday before by Dr. Rowley of what took place in Tobago and so on. And Darren said his piece, Ralph Maraj said his piece, and basically what he just said here, right? What he just said here is what he said on Monday. And then Darren, when he was finished, Darren then interjected and he explained and he said, but Mr. Maraj, you having been there, having been a member of government under Patrick Manning and so on, whatnot, and you understand that the party's, the norm is that you don't have a convention and an election year and so on, because, these internal elections have the potential to be very divisive and very nasty and so on, and you don't want that in an election year and all of that. And he went on. And when Darren was finished, this hypocrite agreed with what Darren said, and he said, yes, Darren, I agree with you what you have said there, and that is yes, that makes sense. In fact, I will, what he use, boy? He said, I will oh gosh, the word escapes me at the moment. He take back what it is he said, right? So all the things that he just said here in this article that he made mention of last week, Monday, when Darren was finished and pointed out to him the the sensibility in not having an internal election prior to the general election or in an election year. He agreed with Darian. And he said that he take back what it is he said. Because what Darian said makes sense. And having been a member of a PNM cabinet, he understands. And yes, that has been the practice of the party. But you still went afterwards and wrote an article advocating and talking about how Dr. Rowley trying to subvert democracy in the party and all kind of thing. And you hope the General Council doesn't allow him to have his way and that they have an election. But you agreed last week, Monday, on national radio that it would not be advisable to have an election, an internal election, or a leadership election prior to the election. And this is a man who wants you to believe he has integrity. Right? So you tell Darian one thing on national radio for all to hear, and then you come and write an article that goes against the exact thing when you agreed with Darian. And you didn't just agree with the man, you know. The position that you've articulated here, that you articulated last week, you say, I take it back. You took it back and then still went and write an article to advocate the same stupidness. So what is really your position, Ralph Maraj? Are you for an election, an internal election, a leadership election in the PNM in an election year, or are you against it? Because your article goes contrary to what it is, the last thing that you said in Citizen Darian last week, Monday. And I hope tomorrow Darian Marcel calls him out on his hypocrisy, right? And should probably play back the recording of last week, Monday's Citizen Darian, in which this lout agreed with Darian that they shouldn't have an internal election, but then you come and write a whole newspaper article advocating that they should have it. And the Express happy to publish that. And you have people who are reading this nonsense and buying into it. PNM supporters buying into this nonsense about, oh, Dr. Rowley subverting democracy in the party and so on, and you want to shove Stuart Young down your throat. And this next clown, Selwyn Kojo. Everybody who want to be advocate and put in their 2 cents and 2 pence, none of them could vote in the PNM internal election, but have an opinion. If you don't have the wherewithal or the right to vote in the PNM election, shut your beak. You have no say in who the PNM should choose as a leader. If you want to have a say, go down to Balize House or find the nearest party group and go and get an application form. But everybody have an opinion. And the people, they're not consulting. General Council met yesterday. Stuart Young, as I said before, got the second highest number of votes in the PNM's internal election in December of 2022. If that is not a mandate, I don't know what is. So all who talking about Stuart Young and the wider membership wouldn't support Stuart Young because he's a half Chinese and half Indian. And the PNM is supposed to be an African party. Where is that written? Where is that written? Of what race was George Chambers? And I keep asking that. Was George Chambers an African man? Was he? I think not. Did the rank and file of the PNM have an issue with George Chambers? But they will have an issue with Stuart Young. And all who want to compare and talk about Stuart Young and Penny. Penny Beckles is a really, really nice person. Very nice person. But in the cut and thrust of politics, especially in Trinidad and Tobago, you have to be able to be a wajang at times. Right? Because Kamala Persad-Bissessar is not going to let up on Penny because Penny is a woman. Or Penny might be her friend. She's not going to let up. Because she sat down at a UNC meeting. Sometime, was it last year? Yes. And allowed Anil Roberts to lay waste to Penny Beckles. Albeit you could see on her face that she wasn't too pleased. But she allowed Anil Roberts to go to town on Penny Beckles talking about if he were to give Penny a penny for her thoughts, she would have change for him and all kind of foolishness. And Persad-Bissessar sat down right and allowed him to go to town on Penny. She's a nice person. But in politics, I don't think I have ever seen Mrs. Beckles Robinson speak on a campaign platform. Maybe I missed it, maybe I forget, but if it did happen, it has not happened in such frequency that I can recall. It happened. Okay? The people who usually speak on the platforms, Dr. Rowley, Stuart Young, Faris, Camille Robinson Regis, the firebrand, Shamfa Kojo, sometimes Nian Gatsby Dolly, Foster Cummings. And there's a reason why these are the people who speak. because they have the wherewithal to be able to go toe-to-toe and hit a knockout punch. People keep saying, Penny is nice, and that is what is working against Penny. She's too nice. In the election campaign, you had to be willing to take off the gloves. That is what is needed. And Stuart Young has demonstrated that he could do that. Stuart Young is on a first-name basis with the international head of BP. He's on a first-name basis with the international head of Woodside. He's on a first-name basis with the international head of Shell. All of these major energy companies. You have other countries around the world where the leaders are not on a first-name basis. I don't think Dr. Rowley is on a first-name basis with all these people. When Stuart Young could tell us that you have these persons who are the head of these international organizations picking up the phone to call him, to ask him if he will be attending some international energy conference because they want to talk to him when he gets there. They have respect for him. They didn't call Dr. Rowley, you know. They called Stuart Young to ask him if he will be at this conference. When it is that these persons in Saudi Arabia or they're in the Middle East and having meetings with their shareholders and talking about Trinidad and Tobago and referencing Stuart Young and Keith Rowley and talking about how important the investments in Trinidad and Tobago are and referencing Stuart Young and Keith Rowley, international publications and Reuters and so on, where these persons are giving comments and are mentioning Stuart Young and Keith Rowley. These are the international heads, not the local heads in BPTT and Shell here. We're talking about the people who in Europe, who in the UK, and who in Australia, and wherever else their international headquarters are. The heads of these companies on a first-name basis with Stuart Young. You feel if you go and ask them, so what are your thoughts on Kevin Ramnarine? Who? Who is he? They know him? No, they don't. Stuart Young has perhaps traveled the most of all our recent ministers of energy with respect to negotiating deals to develop Trinidad and Tobago's energy sector. But when Ramnarine was minister, he is king. All you had to come to me. I ain't coming to all you. Most of the times when he traveled is because he was baggage for Kamala Prasad Bissessa on one of the many trips that she was going to. So hence the other day when his man Mohan Singh is his name, the man who was the Prime Minister of India at the time when they were in office, he died recently. And Ramnarine was most happy to post up a picture with him when Kamala went to India, right, at your taxpayers' expense, and she took a whole jumbo jet to carry a few people to India. Cost you taxpayer $15 million, but she concerned about how much money Stuart Young's pension will cost taxpayers. And he put up a picture there with him greeting Manmohan Singh. But ask him put up some pictures with you traveling, like how Stuart Young traveled to meet with the head of BP now. You have any pictures like that? You have any pictures like, you know how Stuart Young could post pictures with him sitting in a boardroom with the head of Woodside and her team, or the head of Shell and his team? You have any pictures like that you could share with us, Kevin, to show us the work, the extensive work that you would have done with respect to the energy sector? You have any pictures like that? I would think if you did, you would post it. But no, you're busy putting up instead post with the US posted that $25 million bounty on the head of Maduro. You're happy to post that. Yeah, because you realize, yeah, that could threaten the dragon. Yes, all you read, look. But BP or Shell announces that they take a final investment decision with respect to one of the gas fields. You ain't going to post up that. That is not news that you want your followers and friends to read about. The good news. You ain't want that. But anything negative, oh yes, let me post it up and put some dotish comment or some dotish caption. This is a man who was formerly the Minister of Energy of Trinidad and Tobago and who probably hopes that he could come back in that post again. But they love Trinidad and Tobago. And I'll play something here for you. Again, just play this. For those of you who forget, who don't know, right? Okay. Where is this? I'm gonna get this here. Right. Let me play this. Listen to this, right? Again, you see, it's not about
in 2020
who we like and we ain't like.
When by
it's not about that.
2050, then when we
it's not about that, right? So let me just play this here. Listen
into office. September, it had become apparent that all was not well in the energy sector. As I said a short while ago, Trinidad and Tobago's economy, our livelihood, our lifeblood is based on oil and gas. We are one of the first countries in the Western Hemisphere over 100 years ago that started exploiting oil. But when you have these depleting resources, what that means is natural decline. Trinidad's natural decline is somewhere between 15 and 20%. So if you're producing 100 this year, by next year it could be down to 80. When you look at the period, say from 2008 to 2015, both oil and gas had declined significantly. When we came in by 2016, contracts for gas had started to fall off. But at the same time, we discovered, because when all of these contracts were negotiated decades ago, it was at different markers. Like on gas, you see every night on television and in newspapers, the gas price is really a Henry Hub price, which is an American marker. And that's what they pegged us to. But then people are taking our gas, making it into LNG, selling it to Asia for a lot more money than that, selling it to Europe for a lot more money than that around the globe. The government took a decision with production going down. If we're going to maintain our revenue, we have to engage these people. The most sophisticated companies in the world in terms of negotiation, in terms of ability, in terms of being able to hire the best in the world are the oil and gas multinational companies, because they're making billions and billions of dollars. And when you look at the evolution of the world, and in particular in the last few decades, some of the wars, etc., is driven by resources and a desire to get countries oil and stuff like that. To sit down now opposite them and to tell them contracts that they have going forward for the future, we were no longer prepared to accept for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. It was an extremely brave move. When we first did it in 2018 and went to the country to say, hey, we're not getting proper revenue. So whereas the price might be $2, this is being taken and sold for $15. And that's Trinidad and Tobago's resource. Everybody came out and said, we're going to run the investors from Trinidad. You can't break contract. We never said we were going to break contracts. We said treat Trinidad and Tobago with respect. Let us get to the table and have a conversation to see if we could get better revenue for Trinidad and Tobago. And that's what we did. Some of these petchem companies were using the media to attacking the Prime Minister, myself at the time, saying we collapse in the energy industry. Untrue. But it was to put pressure on you, because if the people thought you were doing a bad job and they put that pressure on you, you might have weak knees and give in to the low prices. If we had done that, I remember one particular Easter, speaking to the Honorable Prime Minister, he says, sure, they're now threatening to shut down the plant. I said, Prime Minister, let's hold strong. Let them shut it down. Because if they shut it down, it's going to cost them money. It's going to cost us as well. But they have to make that judgment call. It could cost them hundreds of millions of dollars. Let's call the bluff. And you know why I did that? And why the Prime Minister took the advice? It's for you all in this room and the people. If we had given in and given the low price and locked into that low price of gas in 2022, when the world went into crisis in energy because Russia invaded the Ukraine and prices skyrocketed. At the time, for example, ammonia was traded at about $280, $270 US a metric ton. In the height of the Ukraine-Russia crisis in 2022, prices went up to as much as $1,400 US a metric ton. If we had locked in at the low prices, all of those producers would have gotten super profits. We would have gotten nothing. We held strong. They shut down the plant. Media came at us, but a few days later, they accepted the terms, restarted the plant. And 2022 now is the first time since, I think, 2006, Trinidad and Tobago was not in a deficit budget. That's a direct reason, because we stood firm and we didn't give in. And the thing that drove us is, this is Trinidad and Tobago's resource. Russia invaded.
You heard what he said there? He advised the Prime Minister, call him and said, Stuart, they're looking to shut down the plant. And he told the Prime Minister, let's call their bluff. The Prime Minister took his advice, not he took the Prime Minister's advice. The Prime Minister took his advice. So, Stuart, if you're the Minister of Energy, if you think that's the best course of action, we're going with that. They went with that. And here, wait a little. Had they locked into the low price, which is what the UNC would have done, which is why the UNC gave such beautiful, sweetheart concessions that would see Trinidad and Tobago deprived and denied of energy revenues until 2027 in the form of taxes and royalties, which is why when this administration came in, they had to impose a 12.5% royalty so that at least we could get some of the money back. That is why when Dr. Rowley went, and I think it was Franklin Cann at the time, and maybe Stuart Young as well, would have gone to these companies abroad and told them, hey, listen, as Dr. Rowley said, you have your shareholders and I have mine. My shareholders are the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And I need to negotiate the best thing for them. And see what that previous administration did? That's all well and good for them. But Trinidad and Tobago is under new management, and that can't work for us, especially in a situation where we are facing lower oil and gas prices than they had. They were enjoying oil prices at $100 and plus a barrel, and $8 and something per MMBTU for gas and so on. So they could do that nonsense. The different dispensation now. Okay, and what happened? The companies listened. They say, okay, we see your point. We agree. We're going to give you all back some monies, on the condition that the terms for this agreement would be kept confidential. Because the company said to Dr. Rowley, here, well, we agree with you. Yes, country not benefiting. Maybe the deal was too sweetheart that we got from them, but they offered and we take it. So we give all back money. But we need to keep this confidential because you need to understand we operating in other countries as well. Right? And the concessions we're making for you, we're not making for them. And what we're discussing here in this boardroom should stay in here among us. Okay? Because if that gets out, then these other countries that we're operating in will then want to come and sit around and negotiate in table and tell us the same thing. And then we have to make concessions and give them back money too, which affects our shareholders. Okay? Right. What happened? Dr. Rowley came back home. We get money. The UNC decide they're going to come in the parliament and pose questions. They want to know what was discussed, and what not, and what was the agreement, and all of that. And Dr. Rowley, of course, had to disclose it on national television in the full bear. And then he came back to the parliament sometime later and he said he received a letter from one of these companies expressing their disappointment that despite the fact that they had a discussion in the boardroom and an agreement was had that certain aspects of what was discussed and what was agreed to would not be disclosed in public, here it is that they have to hear and read about it in the newspapers and hear about it from their local representatives, that this is what is what. And you know, put them in a precarious position where they now have to be engaging other countries. Is that a responsible opposition? But their supporters, the fully done supporters will come and talk about yes, transparency and transparency. There are some things that you don't discuss. This is why you can't go and file a Freedom of Information request to get cabinet minutes. This is why you can't go and file a freedom of request to get the minutes of what was discussed in the National Security Council meeting. Because some things are meant to be confidential. And there are issues if it is that gets out. So when we see any leaks and all of these different things, but no, it's transparency and we supposed to know and the country is supposed to know. Well, all right, well, if that is the case, then the criminals could go and file a Freedom of Information request to find out what was discussed in the National Security Council meeting. Because they are citizens, so they're entitled and we want transparency, so they could go and request. So anything that so if it is somebody believes that they are the subject of a police investigation, a confidential, like, you know, in the case of Foster Cummings and so on, you should be able to file a Freedom of Information request on the police service saying, I want to find out if I am the subject of a police investigation. Transparency, and they should be able to do that. Some things need to be confidential. So when I listen to Professor Dum and Captain Dotish on that radio station talking about what they signed non-disclosure agreement and non-disclosure agreement and the citizens supposed to know, not everything the citizens supposed to know. Right? That is why when you vote for a government, you trust that the government is going to work in your best interest. And some things need to remain quiet. Some things need to remain confidential. So that when the head of this company can write a letter to our Prime Minister expressing disappointment, and that you now put our international company in a position when we had no problem, we gave all back the money. We agreed with your arguments, we agreed with your position, and we say, right, look back the billions. I think Stuart Young, the figure Stuart Young mentioned something close to $11 billion is what would have come back to this country as a result of. This is 11 billion that if they had won in 2015, the UNC, we would have never seen. The here come, well, where the 11 billion going? Show we where it going, where it spent. That's all she could see, but couldn't deny what was the facts. But you heard Stuart Young just said it. He gave advice to the Prime Minister. Have anybody else in the cabinet can make a similar boast? I just asking. Anybody else can make a similar boast. The energy sector remains the lifeblood of our economy until such time as we can execute proper diversification plan. Until such time. But I just asking, is there anybody else who could make that boast? And Stuart Young didn't say that behind closed doors. It's in public and it's recorded. So it's right there, it's open for anybody to challenge. So the company that shut down their plant that he referenced there, if it is he lying, they could come out and say, no, that didn't happen. And he told you they were using the media to try and manhandle the government to get their way. All who were saying, oh, Stuart Young and Rowley going and mash up the energy sector. Stuart Young was able to lead the negotiations for the with respect to the restructuring of Atlantic LNG. Why Kevin Ramnarine didn't do that? Why Kamala didn't do that? Is there anything Kevin Ramnarine could point to that he did when he was Minister of Energy that today the country is benefiting from? Wanting anything? No. If he could, he would have posted it on his Facebook page, but he can't. All he could do is criticize Stuart Young and then run from media house to media house and criticize every time Stuart Young says something. So the other day when it was announced, the $1.3 billion that NGC lost, and Stuart Young would have had a press conference to tell us that loss came about as a result of decisions that were taken by the People's Partnership government, Kevin Ramnarine, and everybody that given him an opportunity for him to talk and yap and talk and rubbish. And you had people like Gregory Maguire who had to come out and substantiate what Stuart Young said, and others. Nobody came out to substantiate what Kevin Ramnarine was saying, not even Kamala Persad-Bissessar. So they need to take that, put it in the pipe and smoke it. They are unfit. So again, when it is that PNM people say we're not supporting the UNC, it has nothing to do with race. We keep making the point. These are the things that we look at. The people who are offering themselves on that side. And what do they bring to the table? Other than to eat our food? Nothing. Nothing. David Lee has already shown that he has the propensity to be dishonest in the extreme, to the extent of fraud, which he now is before the court for, to answer a charge. When it is that you have a man who is under police investigation for human trafficking and prostitution, among other things. His own colleagues signed affidavits claiming that he approached them with prostitutes. But yet still Kamala Persad-Bissessar will screen him and bring him back. Point to note that while they all up in PNM business and talking about, oh, Rowley don't want to give the rank and file of the PNM the opportunity to choose a leader to take them into general election. Well, guess what? Kamala Persad-Bissessar's term as leader of the UNC comes to an end in June. Just remember, her position as political leader was not up for grabs last year, right? Because her term ends this year in June. Let us see if she's going to hold an internal election, a leadership election, later this year, so that the rank and file of the UNC could choose whether or not they want her to lead them into the general election or choose somebody else. And when that time comes, I hope all you who supporting that party, who want to come and talk about dictatorship and Rowley trying to force this one down the throat, I hope when Kamala's term comes to an end in June and she's singing a song, well, we will not have an internal election in an election year, and because this and because that all of you all who are accusing Dr. Rowley of being a dictator, you all remember that in June, if the election date isn't called yet, and she refuses to have an internal election for the party to select a new leader to lead them in, and she makes the unilateral decision that she will lead the party and not have the election prior to the leadership election in her party prior to the general election. Don't come and tell me nonsense, but it making sense then, but it not making sense in the PNM. So Rowley must hold an internal election to elect a new leader, because according to Jennifer Baptiste Primus and others, he should step aside and allow somebody else, since he is no longer prepared to lead as Prime Minister. that he should give up that position and have an internal election which could be bitter and divisive. And all they said, yeah, you see, he's a dictator, he's a dictator. I'll remind you all of that in June, when Prasad Bises's term comes to an end, and she refuses to call the internal election. And she refuses to allow the rank and file and the membership of the UNC to choose who they want to take them into election. Just remember that. Yeah? But all you're going to be quiet, but all up in PNM business, have an opinion on everything that is happening in the PNM. But all your turn coming later this year, let me hear what she had to say. People like Anil Roberts, Rowley this and Rowley's a dictator and Small Pin, and he want to shove Small Pin down people's throat. Well, remember that. Let me hear what you're going to say in June when her term comes to an end. You bald-headed lout. Let's see what you will see. Be singing a different tune. This next one, Miss Weave, Jolene John. Let me hear what she's going to say. And all the rest of them.
I don't know.
Bunch of jokers. Well, they're not serious. Let me just take this call here. Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Am I on your...
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Yes, thank you. I just want to make 2 points this afternoon. One, I first want to point you to just a couple lines from 2 letters to the editor in today's Express.
Mm.
One is headed Letter of the Day in print, red letters, Letter of the Day. And the heading is Young will bring a fresh vision. And I'll just read one sentence from there, the beginning. The selection of Stuart Young as the new Prime Minister represents a pivotal moment for the People's National Movement and offers the promise of a fresh vision for Trinidad and Tobago. Why do I read that? Let me tell you why I'm reading that. And it substantiates what I have been saying for the last 2 weeks. On the radio, maybe on your very segment here. Signed Gordon Lachlan Westmoreland, who a few weeks ago endorsed Stuart Young as his choice for the new Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. So he is repeating and reinforcing what he said a few weeks ago. The next letter, I am just going to read a couple sentences on. I'm quoting, I would hate to think that because of his ethnicity, he would be looked down on, both by those in the party and those in the public, for the highest office. I believe we have passed that stage. In any area when it comes to national interest and the betterment of the country, the best person suited for the job should get in order. There should be no contention of ethnicity or, quote unquote, one of our own. I will leave that there. Signed, Arnold Gopi Singh Sanoa. Now, I am sure that in both circumstances, reading letters regularly from these 2 individuals, they are no lovers of PNM. But the point I have been making all along, in terms of a new leadership for the PNM and a new direction for the country, we are talking about somebody bearing a French Creole name and somebody who's an Indo-Trinidadian, Arnold Gopi Singh, from 2 strands of the political spectrum, both endorsing Stuart Young, and essentially both saying the same thing, that the issue of race and one's ethnicity should not disqualify somebody or render somebody ineligible to offer himself or herself for any position in this country. Any position in this country. So much for these black demagogues, like David Mohammed, from whom I was sent a clipping with a nasty statement about Dr. Rowley will spoil his legacy by putting this Chinese man to run the country. Yeah. And in addition to that, a leech like Selwyn Cudjoe, and both of whom, like Enjac, have made a career of living off the state, giving back nothing in return to the young African in this country. I say that without reservation. And this bears out the point that I've been making for the last 2 to 3 weeks. You need somebody who can attract the crossover vote. As I told you before, I'm not referring to the black intelligentsia. I'm talking to people of color, people of different hues, the crossover vote. Could you imagine people of the ilk of Gordon Loughlin sitting down in the yacht club on a Sunday morning or in the Oval, knocking glasses and eating cousins? I'm talking about, well, Stuart, he's our boy, and this and that and the other. And Richard was such a good banker. These are the votes you want to take you over the hump. These are the votes. And the vehicle for that is Stuart Young. And in fact, his very ethnicity is the highest call card that recommends him to these people, which is borne out in those 2 lines from those 2 letter writers in the newspaper this morning. Unfortunately, none of which Penny Beckles is able to do. She will never be able to attract these kinds of individuals towards the party. That is why Gordon Loughlin talks about a fresh vision. And Gopi Singh, on the other hand, and Gopi Singh is that nobody's ethnicity should debar them from holding any office in this country. And what is very interesting too, even a few days ago, the leader of this party, this joking party called Hope, Timothy Hamilsmith, he wrote a letter at the beginning, his first words about that nobody should be debarred and that ethnicity and race are not factors in determining who is eligible for any position in this country. And he's leading an opposition party, a small group, but an opposition party all the same. So you see, this is the value of what I've been talking about. You see, for Timothy Hamilsmith, it kicks in. What kicks in? Not because of my race, I should be debarred from offering myself for a position, a high position in this country. And let me just say a word or two about this Ralph Maraj man. In 2012, when we had this issue of Section 24, if you recall, just a few days before that, there was the discussion in the Parliament. And yes, Ralph Maraj is right when he says that the entire Parliament voted for Section 34. Now, truth be told, as Umbala would say, the bottom line is this. Don't be dishonest and disingenuous and scampish. Yes, the whole Parliament supported the legislation, but there was a rider. There was a rider inside the year. The Parliament gave the undertaking that they will support the whole legislation, barring one section. And the government gave the opposition and the independent senators their word that they will not touch Section 34. The rest could go to Max Richards, but do not send that vexing Section 34, to the President for proclamation. Because you needed to hire new marshals, new courthouses, other forms of infrastructure, none of which were in place when the Parliament gave its approval for Section 34. And the Parliament approved the overall bill, but they told the UNC government, we will only support the legislation, the overall legislation, if you do not include Section 34. So what Kamala and her people did, they got the undertaking of the whole Parliament, but they betrayed the trust of the Parliament by pulling out that little section and sending that section alone, to Max Richards, Independence Night. So they were hell-bent on saving their friends, among other initiatives. So when this wretch Ralph Maraj talk about the whole parliament voted for Section 34, he is lying to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. He's being disingenuous and deliberately disingenuous in doing so. And he must be called out for his outright and downright dishonesty. And that is why I maintain, and I keep saying all along, and I will continue to say, the Express newspaper should hang its head in shame. They have been doing a disservice to this country by having this wretch as a columnist. No other writer in the newspaper, that newspaper, writes with that level of venom and filth and nastiness and personal invective on private people in this country. Nastiness, calling the man Diego Martin dinosaur and all kind of. Is that journalism? Is that choice journalism? Is that the kind of nastiness that John Babb and Jones P. Madeira and people like that used to write? Never, because they had background, pedigree, and class, none of which Ralph Maraj has. And let me just close by telling you this. This is a message to Ralph Maraj. I know you have to political to banker, but I wouldn't get into that right now. There's a certain angle to that I will deal with tomorrow on Marcel's program. But I will just tell you something, Ralph Maraj. We all have our cross to bear in this life. All of us have lost. You, Mr. Romain, you have lost close relatives. So have I. So have I. You lost a sister recently and a brother some time ago. I lost a sister and a brother in the last 2 years. But I am walking around like a ruby dog and blaming everybody for my problem, for my sadness. You have had yours. Don't wear your grieving hat on your sleeve. Don't wear your grieving hat on your sleeve and take it out. Take it out on Keith Rowley. Because you hate him, because he never gave you a job after PNM won the election in 2015. You are just what I call, and a friend of mine describes, as a canal conch. That is what you are. And I make no apologies for saying so. Canal conch, mean-spirited, low class, in every possible form. Even as a man is leaving office, you're saying nasty things about him 2 consecutive Sundays, last Sunday and today. What the hell you want? What you want? But I know what your problem is. I know what your problem is. And I'm not going in the gutter for you, but I know what it is. It's political to banker. But I will dilate on that another day, maybe as soon as tomorrow. For the time being, Ralph Maraj, as Dr. Rowley said in a Diego Martin meeting some time ago, Ralph, take a drink now. And that is my contribution today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. So let me just make this switch here. Right, 1 second. So I see we have a new person on. I didn't see this one before on YouTube. Is going by the term BAP. Is the PNM F the energy sector with the trains 1, 2, and 3 giving away gas for free? Where do you clowns come from? Did you read the particulars of the restructuring of Atlantic LNG to see what the ownership was in the trains before and what the ownership is now and how much more we stand to get? Did you? But always want to come here with a certain nonsense because you all rely on propaganda from the UNC and kick out the PNM and Professor Dumb and Professor Dummer on that radio station. Come with your facts. The name of this on YouTube, it's Facts Are Stubborn Things. The nonsense some of you always come and talk about sometime, anyway. Hello, good afternoon. I am good.
All right, hello, people. We have a nation of mixed people, right? Rowdy must go because PNM is a black party. Now he's going, a son of the soil will be
Marxism.
On our store, in our hospital, is still something else. Exactly what do you want? Because the foundation is the same. It's only the paint has changed. Your address is 2 Pineapple Avenue, Maraj. Nothing has changed but your paint color. It is so easy to understand if your ears are open and if your brain is alive and well. But apparently they're all deaf and their brains are coffee lying down. Mr. Robert, you campaign up and down. Mr. Joseph. And he got stabbed in the back by a leader. Why are you so silent on that, Anil? You always have so much to say, but you're quiet? If Maraj loved this nation, as he says, ask Mr. Mulal what the MBD. It's too talented that well. Don't have a good dinner weekend. Be blessed. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Right. Jenny.
Hi, Dominic. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Good afternoon to you and all those who are tuning up into Facts First. One thing. I want to again congratulate Minister Stuart Young.
Yes.
As she has been given to take the People's National Movement into the 2025 general election. I am not a woman. Me, high priestess, nothing. I'm a citizen of this country, and I'm predicting that PNM is going to win this election. Of course, there will be persons who are disappointed. Because in life, there is disappointment. Who would have favored A over B and C? But when you sit down and you get emotion out of the way, because you can't live on emotional responses only, you have to make logical and critical decisions in life, otherwise you'll walk around here in a constant state of hyperactivity. So when that has gone down, has settled, and people sit down and look at the alternatives of fighting each other than coming together to make sure that the UNC and Kamala predecessor does not get into office. Not because we don't like Kamala, or we don't like the UNC, but because we understand the track record in this country since under the days of Sagar Maraj, under Patio Pandey, and under Kamala predecessor. It is always not in the interest of Trinidad and Tobago. The evidence is there, so I can make that contribution when I say that. And when you look at what the UNC TP, they had a mandate, most beautiful rainbow arrangement of persons wanting to serve this country. That's what they said. And this country and the citizens gave them a large mandate. I didn't vote for them, but however, they were given a 29 seat in the parliament. The PNM had a 12-seater. Everybody laughed at that. PNM went into opposition. And we expected Kamala Prasad be set on these 29 seats and the highest oil prices ever. They would do what is in the interest of all citizens of this country. Because the members of that PP government came from a wide range of organizations within the community, representing a wide range of persons in this country. What did they do? They didn't make laws to protect us. They didn't do legislation to enhance this country. They didn't make any oil deals or gas deals or manufacturing deals or anything for this country to get money. Cynic Park was there. They did nothing with that. E-Tech Park was there. Nothing was done. All the gas deals were there under Kevin and Maraj. Same Dragon, nothing. Atlantic Energy, we wasn't making much money. Out of the whatever gas we selling, we were getting normal prices like everybody else. Nothing was happening, but money was spent. All the youth programs that you knew, they closed all those things down. They closed down the largest youth camp in this country in the Caribbean, the girls' camp in El Dorado. And all they had to replace it with was Colony Orange.
Mm-hmm.
And this general need a hand out and beg for something. Let me eat our food. And I is contented. Let me get contracts to build box trains that go nowhere. And we go be contented. 500 to make a child, that go mind a child. It was a general sense of gimme, put out your hand, welfare society. That's how they brought it to. And the lies they spread on Dr. Keith Christopher, the same black man now, everybody talk, not everybody, well, some talking about he gave over the country to a Chinaman. That was the blackest man in office. And they say too black and ugly to rule this country every day on Facebook. They have memes of him, he face over a lump of feces.
Mm-hmm.
He this, he that. So how now you could come to tell me? And the same man who talks about he give it his legacy and Chinaman, he's a man when they called Dr. Raleigh in this country at Oreo. And we went to him, Brother David, what do you think about this? He basically said he see nothing wrong with the term. But in America, in the developed society, England, where he born, if you call an African man at Oreo, everybody know that is a racist comment. But he felt nothing wrong. So he could come and tell, we know that the same black man only had no problem in calling Oreo a house slave. That he gave a time and that he do something wrong. But then it should be in line with what all they thought about him. Because all you say, he don't like black people. He don't love black people. He don't got black people rotten. He's for the 1%. He's for this one, that one. And now with this decision, all the chastising, make up all the mind and take a fight. Take a side. But I want to say at the end of the day, this is not a fight with anybody. We have a country to build and unite. We have an election to win. All hands on deck. So when we get over, as I started, when we get over all the emotion, all the things should and could and would have, it has been done. Let us start to work together now and get the feelings out, because as I said again, as a builder, none of all really want a UNC to come back in office. And Minister Stuart Young has done the work. I am not saying other people didn't do work, but we're talking about the deals that were made and negotiations that were made to get the deals signed off on. Let us be real, know your limitation. Some who wanted leadership could not have been able to do that. And nothing is wrong with that. If your skill set is not for that and something else, stay where your skill sets are, build there and be the success there. Don't go into areas where you know you will not be successful, because it's not about you and just your constituency. It is about the country of everybody. Every creed and race find an equal place. And you can't tell me in a cosmopolitan country, and only try so hard for years to show that TNM is not an African party, it's all inclusive. And know that there's somebody who don't look like us, is there now in the seat of office or in power, all have a problem. They're always suffering from cognitive dissonance. I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist, but that behavior is cognitive dissonance, where you're saying one thing and have one belief, and then you're saying something else with another belief. You can have two beliefs. It's either the People's National Movement, it's all inclusive, cosmopolitan, any race could be a part of it, or it is just an African party. You cannot be saying the two separate things and want it to be true. Hold a corner, hold a say, but we know we're moving forward with Minister Stuart Young. The other MPs would have indicated that they're moving forward with Minister Stuart Young. And when they speak on behalf of the constituents who voted for them. So we'll have to assume that the constituents are also moving forward with Minister Stuart Young, because none of them there who had aspiration or didn't have aspiration, at the end of the day, want to spend 5 years in opposition, especially with all the oil deals and contracts and money that will be coming in. They will want to be right there to get them for the ministries to spend on the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago and the constituents. None of them want to go out in no last 5 years in politics, to go out in no opposition. So everybody has come on board, and all the supporters, get over your hurt, get over your disappointment, and let us move forward, because it's not about Minister Stuart Young SC. Because he has a constituency and he will very well win a seat. And this one could win the seat and that one could win the seat. But it will come to naught if the PNM is not in office with a large majority to carry it on, because you're toting feelings, put down your bundle by the riverside, go take a bath, sit down and meditate, could have smoked the ganja because now it has been decriminalized. You could go with a certain amount of that, sit down, take a spliff, but a spliff by the riverside, by the seaside, who does take a little drink, who does say the prayers, who like a nice food, whatever, and sit down and think about what we have to lose if a People's National Movement is not in office after the election this year. And then ask yourself, when you finish, will you say, well, we achieved something? Or will it be like the little girl who, when Mr. Mallon lost the election in 2010, started to cry and say, I don't know what's going to happen to we now, dread. Come on, go cut all the program, and then why go on, boy? Why don't go to school now, come on, and then cut all the program? And you know what happened? That little girl was so correct. In 2010, the 50, Kamala cut every program that we children could have gone and learn. So only prefer that to hold on to, so they take up all the marbles like Lee Hunt and them and walk away. Or they say, here what? Let me live and fight another day in the interest of the People's National Movement. Because if Minister Stuart Young win, if Minister Foster come and win, if Mr. Beckers win, if all the members of Parliament win, Trinidad and Tobago win, PNM win, and we'll go forward in 2025, thinking about inclusivity, crossover appeal, and the millennials and the G, what they call them, the G thing and whatever thing. Them is studying the African and Indian thing. They want a society where they could live and love and be free without this sort of racism and racialism coming out of the era of Maraj and the Kamala Prasad and all of them. This is a different time, 2025, a different type of mindset of young people. And they want to see something new, exciting, that has the ability to capture the imagination. And not only about that newness, but has the ability, the credibility, the stability, the experience and knowledge to take us into a new society. Thank you, Dominic, for the opportunity as usual, and it's love. We are fighting nobody in no party. All always one family, and we think in country. And the People's National Movement is the vehicle to take this country from being separated as one body moving forward in success. Yeah? Bless evening, everybody, and have a blessed week ahead. Bye.
Thank you, Jen. Let me just answer Chris here on YouTube. No, Dr. Ollie didn't give me this jersey. Chris, I purchased this jersey in Marshall's in Sawgrass Mall. But I don't expect you to know where Sawgrass Mall is, because I'm sure you probably never even left Trinidad. You probably don't even know what Tobago look like. Furthest you probably reaches maybe Port of Spain once in your life. Yeah, you know where the airport is? I know. I traveled 6 times last year, Chris. You could do that. And guess what? I didn't need any money from Dr. Rowley to do that. How about the clothes too, as you see? Yeah. You want to know where I buy that too? I can tell you, but it wouldn't make a difference, because Not like you could go there anywhere, because you can't go to Sawgrass if you don't have a visa. Sure, you probably don't even have a passport. Poor soul. Sigh. So let me get this here. This one. This no. Let me get this here. Alright, this no. Brian, I had you on hold. I don't know what's going on there. Why I'm not getting you? What's going on here? Come back, Brian. I don't know what's happened there. And for some reason, the hold not coming on. So let me get this here. Hello, good afternoon. Hello, good afternoon.
Dominic,
Oh, good. Leave it there.
what's going on?
All is well, leave it there. Let me hear you.
Look here, boy.
Let me hear you back now.
Sis, good evening. I know it's cold. Make sure you dress warm. Dominic,
Leave it there.
I asked you about that lady from Tobago, Mrs. Stoppin. Let me tell you something I never told nobody before. But because you're my boy, I won't tell you. Before that bacchanal Mrs. Stoppin did in the parliament, before all that bacchanal she did, Dominic, back in the days, I'm in New York. I'm browsing through my computer. I bounced up where Mrs. Stoppin was doing an interview, sitting down in a gallery in Tobago with a young girl, a reporter. They were talking Tobago business. All of a sudden, Mrs. Stoppin told the young girl, I have information that can put Dr. Rowley in prison. Dominic, in prison. When I heard that, I picked up my phone and I called Trinidad. I called my people in Trinidad. I told them, get the number for me for Balize House. Dominic, they got the number and they sent it for me. I called Balize House. I asked them if there's anybody there in the government I can speak to. They said, not at the moment. They said, but I can give you a number. Dominic, they gave me a number. I called the number. It was the number of a minister. Dominic, the number of a minister. I told the minister where I was calling from. I told the minister what I heard Mrs. Stoppin say. I told him, tell Dr. Rowley they're coming after him. Dominic, the next week on the ground report, I hear the SAT saying, yes, we have to investigate the school teacher in Tobago who interfered with a school girl. Dominic, I thought she was going to the police when she talked about prison. She gave the ground report on them the information. Anytime I hear them mention it, I start telling them, I know where all they get that information. I know who gave only that information. Until one day I tell them, all they get that information from Mrs. Stoppin. But Dominic, according to Paul King Douglas, who tell me to say that? Dominic, the rest was history. Dominic, I will leave it there.
It take long to reach there, boy. Lord Father. Whew. Brian.
I will leave it there.
It take long to reach there. Brian.
Oh, yes.
Oh, Lord. The only thing that was missing was Once Upon a Time and Happily Ever After.
Dominic, I feel I'm gonna, I'm gonna get you for Christmas next year. This year, an ambulance. Because some people gonna make you sick.
Oh, Lord.
And you're gonna need transportation to go to the hospital. The new wing of the hospital in Forest. Oh, God. Lord, put a hand.
Senna, man.
Hello?
Yeah, Brian.
Dominic, good afternoon. Good afternoon to your listeners and callers.
Greetings.
I like the fellow with the getty jersey.
Yeah.
And he know where Sawgrass Mall. Dominic, if you only know Sawgrass Mall big like San Fernando.
You know?
and they have these chairs, these massage chairs. So when you walk a little bit, you can sit down and get a massage.
Correct.
I get so tired. I say I go in back by the hotel. No, I can't find my way out.
Yeah. You had to use ways to come out of that mall.
It just reminded me when I went there.
Yeah.
I said, Lord, how I get out? And I'm asking people, but the accent beating them when they're walking off. Someone else. Eventually, I found my way out. Anyway, to the point that you raised. Dominic, in 2015, when this government got into office, some things happened almost immediately. One of them was that the then Governor General of the Central Bank informed the new finance minister that there was only 3 days money left in the treasury. And if he didn't get money as quickly as possible, he would turn off the tap. That was one. So the finance minister had to get down to work almost immediately. One of the second things that happened was, because of the bad relationship that existed between our Caribbean colleagues, especially the Jamaicans at Trinidad and Tobago, they had threatened to stop taking our goods, if you recall. And one of the first things Dr. Rowley had to do was to fly to Jamaica to ease tensions. And as he said when he came back, luckily, when he was at university, many of the people who were there with him, his university colleagues, were also in government or in positions of business, and he was able to soothe their concerns, if you recall. And finally, the third thing that happened was that the downstream petrochemical industries in Point Lisas, a UNC area, were being denied gas because the partnership of Kamla Prasad Bisesa and Kevin Ramnarai promised the Mitsubishi people from Japan and guaranteed them in a contract that the Mitsubishi plant in Labray would be getting all of the gas, and whatever remained would go to Point Lisas, which was very negligible. And the Point Lisas plants would not get enough gas to produce their urea, ammonia, methanol, and so on. And they decided to sue the then government, the partnership that is. And only when Dr. Rowley got into office, he recognized what was going on. And they received a bill, a letter indicating that the government was being sued approximately $6.3 billion by the petrochemical plant companies in Point Lisas, because the contractual arrangement and agreement that they had to receive natural gas was not being honored. But Dr. Rowley had to go to Jamaica. Finance minister was busy trying to look for money. And certain things, of course, as we all know, came up with respect to who took demand loans, and we won't go into all of that at this time. But he had to send somebody to halfway around the world to talk to the Japanese government and let them know that that agreement could not stand and what was happening with respect to the downstream petrochemical industries and so on and so on. So he sent Stuart Young, a young man, a new person, an attorney at law, halfway around the world to negotiate with a team of people to negotiate and so on and ensure that the government of Japan understood what was going on in Trinidad and Tobago and what we were facing. And at that time, when the finance minister had checked, there was no money. Remember all that time, refinery ain't making no money, eh?
Mm-hmm.
So there was no sort of foreign exchange per se coming into the country. Since 2014, we knew there was a problem with the refinery, but it was kept quiet. You understand? But there were people who were talking like even Kevin Ramnarai spoke a little about in the parliament, as well as Khalid Hassan Ali, the president of Petrotrin, in January of 2015.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody had taken it on at the time.
Hmm.
But there was this big thing facing Dr. Rowley at the time because the downstream owners were angry. And they were threatening to leave the country and set up elsewhere because they were not getting the gas based on the contractual agreement that they had with the government. Coupled with that, the upstream industries, there were no renewed contracts with them. And if you, I think it was the president of BP, I think was Christie, ran to the prime minister and said, listen, our contracts with you all may not be effective for too long again, and they should have been seen out a long time ago because those contracts normally run for quite a number of years. But Dr. Rowley had to first go to Jamaica to protect our manufacturing sector in Trinidad and Tobago. And Stuart Young was sent, this new minister, was sent halfway around the world to that issue with that Mitsubishi plant. Basically, people of the government of Japan understood. That was the first thing that Stuart Young had to do as a new minister, if you recall. In 2020, after that election which we PNM won, Dr. Rowley had indicated that he will no longer be standing for the 2025 election. So all those who had ideas of becoming prime minister simply had to perform in a particular way. As I said last time we spoke, the KPI, the Key Performance Index, would have been looked at by Dr. Rowley, who would have been hands-on, looking at all of his ministers and all of those who were forming and so on. And all of us were able to do so as well. So it was anything new. But you know who was really performing? I'm not against any other minister. I'm looking at how everybody performed. Because I was in a position like that in my job, having to look at everybody and not having any favorite. Stuart Young has performed above and beyond. Because at the end of the day, even working out of the Prime Minister's office, Dr. Rowley was able to send Stuart Young on his own after a while to conclude negotiations in Venezuela, Europe, London, Houston, and other places to talk to serious people. As you rightly said, they knew him on a first-name basis. And he was extremely successful because every time he came up and he reported to Dr. Rowley told him to let the people of Trinidad and Tobago know, hold a press conference and let them know what were our successes and what we had gained as for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I always remember he always said so. And every time that happened, Stuart Young would hold a press conference and we would get to know exactly what was happening with certain gas fields and all of these other negotiations and so on. With respect to what one of your listeners just wrote for you a while ago, Kamla Prasad Bisetta did not even know that we had shares in Trains 1 and Trains 4 during her 5 years, 3 months, and 14 days as Prime Minister. Something that she ought to have known. So when that is why you see they could afford to come and say they didn't know exactly what was happening with those trains. And that we given away money because they didn't understand that but what was happening with those trains at the time was that the major owners of those trains who had arrangements with those trains was BP and Shell were using trains 2 and 3 to So we were losing money to a certain extent. And what Dr. Rowley and Stuart Young did was they renegotiated that arrangement with the upstream leaders in their boardrooms to say, listen, as you kept repeating many, many times, that we have shareholders too, and therefore we must have an interest in those trains as well. And that is why today we have a 10% interest in trains, in all of the trains. And every time those trains are in use, the people of Trinidad and Tobago get more money than we would have gotten with trains 1 and trains 4 alone. And these are some of these things that people don't know and don't understand. That these things are very, very important to our future. Because the partnership and Kevin Ramnarai negotiated absolutely nothing for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. When Gerardo Rambaraj said there were 4 periods of no growth, he was talking since 2014. And Kamla Prasad and Kevin Ramnarai told us everything was good, even though they negotiated for us to receive absolutely no taxes and no money at all from the upstream industries. This is what they did. And the negotiations they had with the investment that they had with PPGPL that failed, that Stuart Young had to speak about recently, it was a loss for NGC. And in 2015, when the employees of NGC were looking forward to their normal Christmas bonus, there was none because the $16 billion had disappeared under the partnership. So we have to be careful and don't forget these things of how we're going to vote and who we're going to support. It's not about we fighting against each other. It's about looking back and understanding what was done for us that is important for the country and for the people, the small man, not the 1%ers who have the money, but it is 18% taxes they're paying or 35%, they're still making money. As we have seen, especially last year, when every large industry, including Mutia and others, made money, even though they were paying 30 and 35% corporation tax, they still made a lot of money. Look at Republic Bank, look at all of the banks made money. And there's interest in new hotels coming up and so on, and a lot of new buildings going up, and a lot of investments in Trinidad and Tobago, but people wouldn't talk about these things. Because they too recognize in a few short years what is going to happen in Trinidad and Tobago with respect to humanity, and I want to fully believe Dragon as well. Donald Trump will have time to deal with Dragon at this time. Yeah, more things happening in America right now. Look at LA. Look at LA. You understand? So they have issues of their own to deal with. So to come and say that thing bad in Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Rowley ain't doing nothing. People like Ralph Maraj and I understand him. He was not going to change. He will talk one thing on Monday and do something else totally as soon as he put on the phone. He starts to plan for what he's going to put in the papers next weekend. Because of his hatred, his unadulterated hatred for Dr. Keith Rowley, even though Dr. Rowley is leaving office. They will never ever applaud what Dr. Rowley has done. And I want to say this, if people keep saying that Stuart Young is not a man on the ground and all kind of things. When I was invited to come and walk in Tunapuna for the last local election. Stuart Young came and he was also invited to come and walk. And I was walking behind Stuart Young. He walks very fast. And he doesn't only walk. He was invited. Whenever he's invited, he would go into homes and meet with the people, shake hands and speak with them. He don't be on no back and no truck waving like he is the Queen of Trinidad, the King of Trinidad and Tobago. He walks and he goes into the houses of the ordinary man and woman, want from a new person, a new leader, who we have seen perform, and we know what he can do. A man who has experience, I understand, academic experience in industrial relations, finance and banking, as well as being an attorney, senior counsel. I think he's aptly qualified, and we should be grateful and understand that, listen, we have another leader after Dr. Rowley, who we are certain would have learned a lot from being working out of the office of the Prime Minister, and who would have learned and understood what it would take to be a Prime Minister. I'm not saying he may get everything right. I'm not saying that. I am saying we may not have other very good persons who are attracted to the position. I'm not saying that. But at this time, I think we would have done well, and I think we should continue and give him every opportunity. Because we always saying, well, give the UNC a chance, but give Stuart Young a chance. Let him prove himself as he takes over the reins of office. And perhaps we will get an idea, because when he spoke last night after the meeting, he indicated that he has ideas and he has plans to move the country. He didn't say move himself, he said to move the country forward. Yes, and we ought to simply give the gentleman an opportunity to move himself forward. Dr. Roy didn't impose him on any of us or anybody, any of the other ministers, but they are those up to Friday morning on radio. I have to be listening that Dr. Roy is imposing his position on the other ministers and so on. What stupidness I listening to? And they're running with that, all because of a hatred for Dr. Rowley. Someone who has served and has served admirably for 45 years without having the police knocking on his door. They don't speak about, imagine last week I had to listen to a television talk show in the morning, asking a dissident, a man who doesn't have corner in the parliament, what is his observations of what's going on in the PNM? You're asking this man about what's going on in his own party, but you asking him about what does he have to say about what's going on in the People's National Movement? And I had to listen to people talking about, I had to listen to Akash Samaru talking about he has senior sources in the government that he can get information from. But go get it if you have it. Don't ask the ministers anything. Are you camping outside Balisay House to attempt to get information out of the ministers after the meeting? Why are you doing that? If you know it is you admitting that you have sources inside the PNM, but go ahead and ask them. Don't be camping outside waiting for the meeting to be finished yesterday to be running down ministers to ask them what it is they spoke about in the meeting. You go to your sources and find there's always a senior source, but you go find out. But you're running down ministers. And then when they get whatever information they get, they just blow it out of proportion and mislead the people of Trinidad and Tobago. What a shame. And these are media people. What a shame. All these anti-PNM media people and all of these people who are afforded the opportunity to write their columns in the papers against the PNM. And they say they love this country. It's a crying shame. And I hope the people who are listening and watching on can understand what is really and truly going on. But they got the shock of their life yesterday when all 21 had signed the document to go before the president. Well, they now feel deflated. They know what to do now. Well, they will come up with some other lie again, I guess. So we just have to wait. Dominic, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Hello, good afternoon.
It's me again.
Hi.
Pure oil in oil, okay? If you're competent, how you don't happen in the oil industry? We pay 1 and 2. You call Rowdy lazy, hammer you in F. You always advise, you never know. You cannot accuse people when you are in everything you do. She needs to step down. You need to retire. You have to look at yourself and your party. You are not fit to serve. You never know. If you can't do what in your party, how can you rule a nation? You cannot. And I'm saying this, Michaela is quiet, because I think Chen Kamla is talking behind closed doors. Right? Because if you watch the UNC Bacchanal was imploded, she's quite about that. Taylor is and cannot talking. And Kamla is quiet too because she wants to undermine TNM. Kamla, hear me well. The same what is digging for PNM party is going to fall. Make sure it bubble up. Because you will be Humpty Dumpty of politics. Don't go again. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
You too. Thank you. Hello. Good afternoon. Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, hello, you hearing me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Good, right. I have a few things to say. I'm going to try to keep it concise as possible.
Okay.
I'm starting off with, I was unconcerned. My minister met, made a decision. Girl thing, you're running an organization, you know, you're planning to see. You have discussion. I think people get the heads up. Smooth transition. Give them the opportunity to say, well, okay, when you leave so and so, we'll take over in the interim. My concern all of last week was TNM's response, where they took the Democratic people in America, how everything the Republicans said, they were there running down the road and trying to say, no, it's not so, and twisting themselves up in a knot. 2025 is going to be a nasty and it's going to get weak. So, TNM people to a man, whether you know it's true or not, you have to stand up, no, it is not, and go down the road and put everything in front. And don't take on these UNC people, right? Because you take them on, you're actually selling their narrative, right? That's just my aside. This, and I'm trying to be really polite here, the drunk that wants to be Prime Minister again talks about Stuart Young electing a Prime Minister's salary gratuity if he acts on it, understands what or not. She seems to have forgotten that when she had 33 ministers, but 33 ministries, practically everybody got a touch as being Prime Minister for the day. Okay? And the idiot from Tobago actually had a press conference to talk about the honor it was for her to be Prime Minister. I will never forget it. With a nasty pose and tears in the act. It's a Wednesday evening, and by the Thursday morning, after I was back in the country. She's now entitled to a pension, right? Jack Warner was Prime Minister. Everybody was Prime Minister. She didn't have a problem then. So she could miss me with that nonsense. Trinidadians need to remember, okay, what was going on. That gentleman who was from America, right, who called all that nonsense today, perhaps if he'd been paying a bit of mind, more attention, he would have known that when she ran in May 2010, she disappeared for 3 months while the country was run by Stuart Young. And then she turned up in August with a whole new face, smiling
and that was the first picture I have was her and Jackson. And you had to question whether at that point, whether Mr. Bissetta pipe was the only pipe she knew. That is how distasteful and questionable that picture was. All right? Those are the things you need to know about. Then there was the issue of and this was a headline that nobody had a problem with. The Kamala's 5 women. Kamala's 5 women. Where they were alluding to her sexuality, that was the leading thing. We have a problem with that. Right? There are all sorts of things that could go back and show why she's unfair. And why all sorts of things was allowed and nobody had a problem. But because she wasn't black, so that nothing was said, it was fell and went on. So that's what. So, Batiste, Miss Batiste, who was the head of a union, who knows about general counsel. I just been watching and going, what is going on here? Right? She, for the time, general counsel had taken a decision in the perpetuity, what she would get, how she would get it, whatnot. There was a section that disagreed. They had to dispute. The general counsel at the end of the day took the decision to go one way. The section was sidelined after the one person never came out with the decision and the break. So when I see her now coming out of a general council meeting, alluding to spread it tells me it's either one she's going senile because it happened. Right? And I wonder who is that. Right? Yes. And she's hoping to undermine much mischief with the cause. But my take for people like Mariana Brown, Mr. Hunt, are people who've never stood for the polls, you know. Mariana was brought back from Barbados, back here in Barbados by Mr. Manning. There's some question about what was going on there in Barbados when he came back. There have always been allusions or whatever. Okay? Jennifer Batiste also came in. She was supported. So that Mr. Lahanda used to call him the little boy. He's from Tobago. That is why Dr. Rowley, but none of them have ever stood up in the polls. None of them showed an interest wherever they're living to get involved at the level. So the group, they're doing something in their community, they can bubble back up. They're different lines, but they're out there discussing business in a big way. They're trying to undermine something. You can't undermine it and then rule it. Okay? They're unspoiling. That. I'm very clear. You can't be on stupidity, and I'm following you. They're on stupidity. Constructive criticism is one thing. Just call out what they have with Dr. Rowley, and by extension, the people's movement. States first. Okay? Now, Penny. The 9 people are taken with the press, the rag sheets in the newspapers, right? I'm going with that. 9 people voted. Dr. Rowley did say 9 was 11. Those 9 people clearly showed that they have no aim. They are not forward thinking. They have no conjecture. I respect Penny, I like it. But common sense would have told me, if you want a smooth transition, Mr. Young, bring the job, he's been acting Prime Minister forever. And then Dr. Rowley stepped out, he would not come to support. So for me, the only other name that could have been called, but it's possible because he's the finance minister. But those are the 2 who are acting as Prime Minister. If Dr. Rowley leaves in March, election is due end of August, September. That's when he needs to hold on. The chairman, who's also an MP, who's also been acting, would have been the best one for the short term. And if you so want to see that, of course, I have no problem with it, but he could bubble up. That ensures that in that time period, going forward from now, activate so you make sure whatever is happening when your name comes up, it's actually viable and it's not because they like you. Because guess what? They only like you because you're black. And they think that thing you against Kamala, right? Where they are constantly expecting everything black. The president of the country, because she was denigrated. You feel they like you? No, they know they could do that and get away with it because nobody stood up. Nobody said, no, that's not done. All the presidents also, right? So they would do the same to you, and that's what they want. You need to pick up about all of that. All the work that Stuart Young has been doing is a smooth transition. People already know him. They have to ask them what's going on with you. Right? They don't know you. It's over again. So all of these things tells me that they are not quite ready. They're still young. They will learn. It's a pure art of war. This niceness that they have going on there, so it will not work in their stead. But in fact, everybody tries to hold the fort, on the road, because it's going to get that way nastier. And the last thing, last time I checked, Stuart Young is a trim begonia. Okay? Kamala and UNC and the Indian. Stuart Young is trim begonia. He worked at half of Trinidad and Tobago. Right? Unlike people who was working at half of the park and taking a 10% on the side. For everything, why everything was overpriced, nothing was working. The people of Trinidad and Tobago, didn't have a problem with him. He's been working for years, he was doing all kind of things, and he continued to work hard. That is what we need to pay attention to. Don't let these such idiots who those country to that hard, what they iron is the treasury to get back in and thief. It's not to thief my money. And it's about who you like, it's put with the job. Okay? I am concerned about my money. Because when I push my card, money's supposed to come up. Not I pay you later. Sorry. And Kamala face smiling at me because I like she. It's not okay. Not in 2025. It is going to be vicious, it's going to be nasty. I'm not prepared to get as nasty because they're going into the gutter, which is where they're from in any case. So all they have to be prepared. On that note, have a lovely evening. Okay? Continue to work those that are here and people like them. Yes, yeah, they're not worth it. Okay? Have a good evening.
Thank you. Truth, and those who come and always celebrate their God, Stuart Young. With what, who's this ghetto gun dog? That is the PNM greatest Stuart Young. What a shame and disgrace. Stuart Young has never achieved anything on his own merit without Dr. Rowley. He's a baby in the cradle. It amazes me when you all come at this set of nonsense and loutish talk, right? Because many times when Stuart Young went to Venezuela to negotiate the gas deals, Dr. Rowley wasn't there. Dr. Rowley wasn't there. And I would have heard firsthand from one of the attorneys, state attorneys, who went with Stuart Young on those negotiations, and she was there because she's fluent in Spanish. And I mentioned to you a couple of days ago that this is somebody who wasn't really thrilled with Stuart Young. But you know what? She subsequently, having seen Mr. Young in action, was very impressed at the way that he was able to handle all of these negotiations and so on. So when this individual who has the name Ghetto Gonda talking about Stuart Young and a whole set of thing about Stuart Young, and Stuart Young never do anything for himself without Dr. Rowley. But then you didn't want Dr. Rowley there. So what's the real problem? You realize that Stuart Young has crossover appeal. Because I am seeing where persons who may appear to be supporters of the UNC, are expressing, some of them, when you look in comments and so on, expressing some level of confidence in Stuart Young. And then coming out of the meeting last night by Stuart Young, when he was heading to his vehicle and the media sort of get a comment from him about how he feels. And he said, it's not about me. It's not about how I feel. It's about how Trinidad and Tobago will feel, right? Team PNM. So it tells me that in the time that he is going to be serving as Prime Minister, that he intends to maybe shake up some things, perhaps now that he would have the authority to make certain decisions, certain changes, because as Prime Minister, the complexion of the cabinet in terms of who represents what ministry, if he wants to reshuffle the cabinet, he could do that. He has the power to do that. And maybe he has some ideas. Perhaps he feels that certain persons might operate better in certain ministries. Who knows? But that may be able to accomplish. But these are all of the things that you all can handle. So I haven't had an opportunity to look at it yet, but someone pointed to me, David Nacken did a whole rant about PNM and the race thing and the race card and the race card. I see as one of these individuals, I forget which one it was just now, on YouTube talking about how the PNM and race and the PNM always playing the race card. Really? How so? How so? When the PNM brought the current head of Heritage, Eric Keskula, who is a white man from abroad. It was Anil Roberts who did a live, one of his doubles on Coffee, or was it Douglas Politics, to chastise and talk about, oh, it has so much black people in the country, and Rowley couldn't find a black man to put in the position. They had to go abroad to get a white man and all of that, and trying to tell PNM supporters not to vote for Mr. Keskula, not to vote for the PNM, because they put a white man to lead Paria. Then he went on another rant trying to gaslight PNM people, talking about talking a pack of nonsense about if you look at who making up the cabinet, the PNM supposed to be a black man party, and look who Rowley given all the best positions to. And he given the best positions to the East Indians and the French Creole, and not the Africans. And why it is he put Stuart Young to act as Prime Minister and he didn't put Camille Robinson Regis or some other one of the Africans to act. The UNC are the ones who keep talking about race and trying to gaslight persons of African descent who support the PNM. They say, but the PNM is supposed to be a black man party and an African party, but Rowley doing things and who he appointing and giving positions and all of these different things, he not giving it to the Africans. So when we're talking this dotishness about the race card, and who really pushing the race card? Who really doing that? I never hear Dr. Rowley tell nobody, all you have to vote for the PNM because the PNM is supposed to be a black man party. Never heard Dr. Rowley say that. In fact, the only time there was ever an appeal to race, as far as I am aware from the platform, was when Hilton Sandy made that comment about the Calcutta ship coming down. But otherwise, that the PNM leadership understands that the PNM is made up of a number of persons, is supported by persons of a variety of different races. It's always talking about the 1% and the PNM and the 1% and the 1%. Every time the race talk come up, when all you lose in 2015, who it was who came on social media, on Facebook, with all the nasty, dirty, racist comments, talking about calling PNM supporters monkeys and advising East Indian businessmen to increase the prices of the goods for persons of African descent, and advising East Indian doubles vendors to put feces in the doubles for the Africans and so on. Who did that? It was all you UNC supporters who were doing that. And the same thing when they lost again in 2020. Remember the Ramsaran punch, Ramsaran orange juice people and others like that who were doing a whole set of posting comments and all kind of thing. Oh, they only vote on race and they vote on race. You know what they're vexed about now? Stuart Young is not an African man. So that if it is that the PNM wins the next election, all they can't come and say, well, you see, that is why this happened when you vote race and all they choose to vote race. Which race we vote for? Which race we vote for? Because Stuart Young is half Chinese and half East Indian. His mother is an East Indian, right? So how we vote for race? He's not African. We vote based on competence, right? And his ability and what he could do as Prime Minister. And that's what all are afraid about. Because your leader is not on a first name basis with anybody of note. Your former Minister of Energy is not on a first name basis with anybody of note. And if he were to come back, he still wouldn't be. Right? Because he's a loser. In fact, the whole leadership of that party. But anyway, I can just take a couple more quick calls. So let me just deal with that. Hello, good afternoon. Yes, sir. Greetings.
I think to all the listeners, I want to thank Mr. Yates for the quoted those 2 letters there, the 2 letter writers. And the 2 letter writers for me indicating one thing, right?
Yeah.
And exactly the same thing I was discussing with somebody a couple of days ago. Just think about if the first time voters on the roll this election and just 10% of the front sitters come out to vote because of Mr. Young's elevation to the post you are seen. And let's say in all the contributions that the PNM control now and the others that they don't, and the few that are marginal, you just get a 50% turnout of registered PNM voters. How significant that would be for the fortunes that would be Mr. Young's should the party be successful in the next general election. Because it may mean we will be able to get close to a 3/5 or get a 3/5 majority and make the opposition party irrelevant, particularly if after June, this is the possibility that I am looking at. I would be appreciative of what the Prime Minister would have done. I know it's a long time ago I made the observance when Ms. Maraj came back out that she no longer seemed to be a friend of PNM. I wonder if that is because she would have felt that in her legal troubles she did not receive significant support for the perceived work that she is doing. But it seems that she has now joined the ranks of people like Stephen Kojo and others who would have fed at the trough to the city PNM. And now they turn in the vitriol and gaze on the PNM. And that same point you made about the Dr. Brown. I have to make that point to somebody. So how come you don't know how go peaceful on them vote? I say because they are senators. Why they are MPs? They are not members of the House that matter when it comes to these things, when it comes to things, which is strictly the purview of the lower house, the House of Representatives and members who sit there. But I would think that Dr. Brown's speaker is by put himself up as a candidate for the bigger matter. And if he's endorsed by the party groups and the party executive, which I don't see that should be a problem. Member of Parliament, one is experience, and also one who gravitas and the experience and the spirit in the debate. So I'm sure that
You're sounding a bit muffled, caller.
Yeah, you just seemingly slip into the space that Dr. Rowley will be vacant in terms of an orator and formidable platform speaker. I have no doubt that he will slip in today and acquit himself manfully for the task that is ahead in this upcoming election. I would just say in passing that when you consider all that you have outlined, callers like Brian, Mr. Jenny, and Mr. Chance and Mr. Yates, it's clear, it is clear that the management of this country could only be successfully carried out by one party. And I want to leave with this. The 2030 vision will become so clear and square when we consider that this parliamentary term upcoming will be just straight into 2030. And if we get the deals and the returns from those deals in terms of gas production and so on, I want to ask my fellow chamberwomen who they would prefer to have us go into the promise of Vision 2030 other than the PNM. Because the UNC will scrap that. And none of them who speak for them have yet come with a vision of how they intend to move the country. All they intend to do is to use the unutilized funds in the NIB, as their leader said, and to once again raid the NGC and live off the overdraft of the central bank. Other than that, they tell us nothing about how they would maximize our potential, human and physical. So I just want to say that we only have one choice. We only have one choice, and that choice is to stand behind the party, which has kept us afloat, steady and even keel, where the economic output is good and we are stable. And all that is without having to take the prescription of institutions from Washington. Take care, Dominic, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir. All right, so I just taken this one more quick call, folks, because I got to go. As Darian say, I got to go. Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Just one quick thing. Just one quick thing. At the end of the day, the real issue for the UNC, not so much the PNM now, the real issue for the UNC now is how to hold back this juggernaut. That is what it is. Stuart Young's ascension to the position of Prime Minister changes the whole political dynamics. It changes the entire thing. And you see the Anna Gopi things who are writing in support of unity in this country and not race and racism as major factors or as bases for judging somebody's qualification for any position in this country. It is driving the fear of God into Kamala Prasad-Bisseka. That is what is happening to her right now. Because she envisages, because this young man straddles two races, Indian and Chinese. And you see, what Kamala is afraid of is that it could split the Indo, middle, and bourgeois classes in this country straight down the middle. Straight down the middle. Because when PNM goes to the campaign trail, visuals are very important, eh? And when people see, like Stuart Young, let's take like San Fernando West, for example. Now, we all know that as distinct from San Fernando East, San Fernando West has the more middle-class areas. St. Joseph's Village, Belia, Gulfview, that constituency has the more affluent sections, and they have the more professionals, they have more doctors, lawyers, and so on in San Fernando. And many of them are Indo-Trinidadians. So what is scaring Kamala to death is that between Al-Rawi and Stuart Young, on that platform, it could split the bourgeois Indian vote straight down the middle. And that is what she's afraid of. She knows the net effect of Stuart Young being there, She damn well knows. She ain't stupid. She might be scampish, but she's not dishonest. She might be scampish, but she's not stupid. She knows the net effect of having Stuart Young there. You see, Dr. Rowley's a moving target. They could look at him and they say, he's a black man, look how black he is, he's Oreo, he's black man, and tell Kamchi a slave master name. What you going to say about Stuart Young racially? What you going to say? Stuart is not a moving target like Dr. Rowley. So Dr. Rowley having stepped aside and placed Stuart Young, and now by general acclamation at the level of the General Council, his taking the position of leadership of the party now. The target changes completely. The whole discussion changes. What are you going to say about Stuart Young? Your UNC will go down the predictable road for self-preservation and fear. Oh God, look this white man here, which he isn't. But with this fair-skinned man here, what we go do, at one end, I don't like him politically, but I like him socially and racially. When I look at him, I like the optics, I like what I've seen. That is what those two letters I referred to talked about. And that is what the very presence of Stuart Young, reading the PNN now, that is what the UNC very well knows, what it portends for their electoral chances. They cannot deal with Stuart Young leading the PNM. They cannot deal with that. It is a first in the country's history. First in the country's history. And UNC cannot deal with that. So they will go down the predictable road, race, and what they will do, they will say they betray their own black people and talk to black people. Let Jolene John go on the platform and Robert. Black people look up here and them do audio. They don't like audio. They only want audio for vote. And audio using outhouse. They will be back at Lavanti. I hope my people wise up and understand and could separate the trees from the forest. Thanks for the opportunity again. Good afternoon.
Thank you, sir. Right, so I need to wrap up, folks, but let me just address one thing here from from Ghetto Gunda, I think. It says, caller, I can give you 2 minutes, please. Keep it short. Hello, good afternoon. So let me just make this change here. Right, I've got to go, folks. Just this quick one here, and then. Hello, good afternoon. Hello.
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 Yes, caller.
Yes, Dominic. Good afternoon to you and the listeners.
Yeah, Rick, I keep it short.
Hello.
I say I keep it short. I don't go.
Yeah. I just calling to congratulate the PNM, the People's National Movement, because they feel the other opponents felt that there's a crack and there's discontent and there's thing. Yes, they might get one or two might be disappointing, but at the end of the day, that too shall pass. So let me take this opportunity to congratulate the incoming Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Stuart Young, and I know he is going to do a fabulous job in respect of bridging the gap of the racial discrimination that takes place in this country on a constantly basis. So, Minister Young, congrats again, and I know you will do us well, not only in Trinidad and Tobago, but regionally and internationally. Right, Dominic, program, lots of listening.
Thank you, sir. Right, so let me just address this one thing here quickly. So Ghetto Gonda says, I swear I will never support Young because he's an opportunist who entered with no competence, but was favored to become indispensable like God by sick people with no sense of self-justice. I want to ask you something. When Patrick Manning made Karen Nunes Teixeira the Minister of Finance, Teixeira is on record as having said, I have no knowledge of finance. I know nothing about finance, but I will be depending on the technocrats in the ministry to assist me. You remember that? What experience did she have? She was a lawyer. No experience, but Mr. Manning gave her one of the foremost ministries. One of the foremost ministries, finance, which he was holding before. You remember that? Let's look at some of the other ministers in the cabinet who are just come, who Mr. Rowley brought in. Nian Gatsby Dolly. What is her background? Foster Cummings. What is his background? No, since you want to go down that road, let us go down that road, right? When you want to talk about experience, how many of them came in the same time with Stuart Young? How many persons did Mr. Manning make ministers who were political neophytes? But you had all confidence in Mr. Manning, not so? Not so? Right? But all of this issue about Stuart Young and you're not going to support I saw you make a comment here with crossover and you put it in caps. When we talk about crossover, it has nothing to do with race. All right? There are persons in the UNC who are disgruntled with the current leadership of the UNC, who are minded to perhaps vote for the PNM if the PNM has a leader that they could probably stomach, or a leader that, you know, they say, okay, you know, it's not so bad. And I have seen, as I've said before, persons who support the UNC who have said, listen, maybe you could get Stuart Young a chance, you know? Because the issue was Rowley. They had a problem with Rowley. Rowley this and Rowley that and Rowley the other and Rowley the next. So there are those who will say, well, here what? Kamala was tried and tested. Keith Rowley was tried and tested. Keith Rowley is going. Stuart Young is coming in now. We'll give him a chance. You know, in the same way that some of you PNM people did in 2010, when Kamala was never prime minister before, she had no experience being prime minister. She had no experience acting as prime minister, as Stuart Young has done, because everybody else that you could point to in the cabinet, and I hear you talking here about Robert Lehunt and how Lehunt this and Lehunt that. Mr. Lehunt has any experience acting as a prime minister? They say when the going get tough, the tough gets going. When Mr. Lehunt couldn't have his way, what did he do? He resigned as a minister, and resigned, I think, from the post that he had in the PNM executive as well. That's what he did. He didn't stick it out. He resigned. That is why he's not in the cabinet today. Nobody forced him to do that. Okay? But what experience did Prasad Bisesa have in 2010 as prime minister? Zero. Zokes, nilch. But that didn't stop plenty PNM people who have an issue with Stuart Young and his competence and his experience from saying, let me give somebody who has no experience in being a prime minister, despite the fact that your leader then, Patrick Manning, told you all. The Kamala Prasad Bisesa of today, who is offering herself as prime minister, is just not ready, my dear friends, lacks the political skill, lacks the political training, lacks the political experience, lacks the political acumen, and would be a disaster if she were to become prime minister. But I didn't stop Ole from going and giving her a vote. You know, we can say no, it's something new and give her a chance. And she's a woman, and she's nice, and she's soft, and she cares for people. How did that work out? How did that work out? But I didn't stop Ole from giving her a chance. Stuart Young has acted as prime minister. He has demonstrated his competence, the same competence that you are challenging. He was able to accomplish what Franklin Kahn couldn't, what Nicole Oliveri couldn't, what Kevin Ramnarine couldn't and didn't, what Carolyn Sipasad Bechan couldn't and didn't. Just to draw that to your attention. What this guy who is the Conrad Enel couldn't and didn't, and they were there, right? He was there for 4 years. And Dr. Rowley clearly Dr. Rowley saw something in this man. Stuart Young didn't have experience in the energy sector. He's an attorney. But clearly, all of them who he brought in, along with Stuart Young, who were political neophytes for the first time, everybody had an equal opportunity to demonstrate their skills and their ability to impress the prime minister. All of them, equal opportunity. And clearly, just remember, unlike some of them who got full ministerial positions when they came in, Dr. Rowley gave Nian Gatsby Dolly got a whole ministry for herself. She was minister of culture and stuff and thing. Her first stint. You had Shamfa Kojo, others, Marvin Gonzalez just came in 2020, and he gets a whole ministry, the Ministry of Public Utilities. Marvin Gonzalez came from the Ministry of Works and Transport. He's an attorney at law. But Dr. Rowley gave him public utilities, and he embraced it, and he ran with it, and he's doing a very good job. Stuart Young wasn't so fortunate. When Stuart Young first came in, Dr. Rowley put him as a minister in the Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs under Faris. And he was serving as a minister in the office of the prime minister. He didn't have his own ministry at that time, but others who came in after him get whole ministry. He had to serve his time, and he did it. But you all forget these things. So when you want to come and talk about competence and Dr. Rowley bring him in and brought him in and favored him and all of that, let us not forget that. That he was brought in and similar, you could say like a OJT. But people who came in after him didn't have to serve no OJT. They got full ministries one time and grabbed it, ran with it, and did a very good job. And clearly, as I said, Dr. Rowley saw something in Stuart Young. He saw certain skills in Stuart Young, and he nurtured that. To the point where I played the clip earlier on when you hear Stuart Young talking about how he gave advice to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister called him and said, Stuart, they're looking to shut down the plant. And he advised the Prime Minister what to do in his capacity as Minister of Energy in 2022. How long was he minister at that time? And yet still he was able to do that. He was able to negotiate the linking of Manatee, the Dragon gas deal, Coquina, Mannequin, and to get these companies that some of these gas fields that were discovered since 1983 and were just there, he was able to sit with them and negotiate and get them to now make a final investment decision. But you all don't want to give the man credit for all of that. But you know what? Put somebody else to lead and leave Stuart Young there. But we know he has these skills and he's probably the best person to be the Minister of Energy. So leave him in energy and let him go there and continue to make the deals and negotiate and stuff because he's good at that. But that is the furthest that he could reach. Well, put somebody else. Since you know, name somebody else in the cabinet who could do what Stuart Young has done for the last 3 years or 4 years. Because you know better than Dr. Rowley. Name them. You can't. I know, Stuart, if it is you don't like Stuart Young because you find, well, he's a Chinese mixed, and you're probably one of those who hugging up this whole Afrocentric thing and feel like the leader of the PNM must always be somebody of African descent because what? Because what? So what message you're sending to the other people whose votes you depend on? When it is that you have in certain constituencies, the PNM winning by a few votes, a couple hundred votes makes the difference. In Tobago, let us not forget, Ansel Dennis lost by how many votes? 3. And you had others like that, in some cases, who lose by 20-something votes and all of these different things. These votes that you taken for granted make a difference, my friend. They make a difference. And when I talk about crossover, it has nothing to do with race. It has to do with persons who support other parties, but who might not have a problem taking a chance with Stuart Young, who are vehemently against Dr. Rowley, who may say, well, okay, I could never vote for Coleman Burt because I don't like Imbert to this and Imbert to that. But I could take a chance with Stuart Young. I can't vote for Hines. I don't like Hines incompetent or Hines whoever. I can't vote for Hines if Hines was a leader, but I will take a chance with Stuart Young. That is who I'm talking about when I mention crossover. All right? So let us get it correct. Let us get it correct. So when you want to try and undermine the man's abilities and say, well, he's incompetent and this and doctor, and he learned from this one and he learned. So he learned from Nicole Oliveri and he learned from Franklin Kahn, but he was able to accomplish what they couldn't. That making any sense to you? What they couldn't achieve in the energy sector, he was able to accomplish because he learned from them. Well, okay, well then that's well. If that is how it works, well, I all for that. I all for that. And therefore, if you're telling me that he could learn from them and learn so well that he was able to perform the way that he did in that ministry, well, then it tells me that he learned well from Dr. Rowley to be a prime minister, having served in the office of the prime minister.
Okay.
So now that you're questioning Dr. Rowley's better judgment, Dr. Rowley enforced nobody. If you don't like the man, just don't vote for him. Simple as that. Don't support. Well, don't vote for the PNM but as I said before, Stuart Young is going to be prime minister. He is not the leader of the party. He has not been appointed and will not be appointed leader of the party unless it is he faces the polls, the internal polls, like everybody else, when that time comes. And if it is the rank and file of the PNM votes for him, then what are you going to say? You ain't supporting him because of what? So you're going against the will of the membership of the PNM? If you're a member, when the time comes, whoever offer themselves as leaders, you go and vote for whichever one you want. If Robert LaHunt thinks that he has the capacity, the ability, and the wherewithal to be the prime minister, no problem. But I had the experience of working in an environment with Robert LaHunt in my time as Republic Bank, but I will say no more on that. Okay? I will say no more on that. And I know persons who have had the experience of working with Mr. LaHunt as well. And I say no more on that. So, you don't like Stuart Young? No problem. No problem with that. You do what it is that you had to do. What's the time there by 2:28? I just taken Mr. Chance here quick. I said I was wrapping up. Let's see what happened last week. Mr. Chance.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, sir.
Yes, sir.
A very special good afternoon to you, sir.
Same to you.
And thank you again for taking my call. First of all, I want to place on the public record, sir, the congratulations to debunking you, Eric, and Jenny in particular,
for the advocacy role you all played in getting the result that took place in Bally's House yesterday. Sometimes, we are not aware of certain things that are happening to create the public opinion. And I think that yourself, Eric and Jenny, in respect to debunking, played a critical role in feeding into the public opinion. And by the way, the public opinion overwhelmed the General Council because they knew in their heart there's no point in having a political leader that cannot win a general election. So if you are in a general council, your goal is to get your political leader to win the general election. And then they recognized that there was an overwhelming support in all the cardinal points of Trinidad and Tobago for the Honorable Stuart Young SC. So I want to put on the record to thank you, Jenny, Eric, and indeed all the callers on this platform who played a role in that, because public opinion is very critical. I want to make, as the Fayed says, I'll make him 2 points today, and the 2 points is underscored by what Brian said. He spoke about the walk into the Puna, and I was there, and he spoke about a trip to Japan. I'm going to just say briefly about those two, but before I do so, I want to tell the listeners, and you have children around, I want to let you know that recusal is a good thing. Whenever you hear the opposition leader come and say, that's a big thing that Mr. Stuart Young recused himself 101 times, as though that is something bad, go in your phone and you recognize that recusal is a good thing. It's the same thing that same UNC was doing with the word recalcitrant. We all felt that recalcitrant was a racist word. But when you go into the dictionary, you realize that recalcitrant means uncooperative, unsupportive, obstinate. Had nothing to do with race. And for years and years and years, that was promoted. People saying the recalcitrant they are like free because you have a different ethnicity. It has nothing to do with that. Recalcitrant means unsupportive, uncooperative, and that's it. Now let us come to recusal. Mrs. Bicessa is giving the impression that recusal is a bad thing. But if you take it out, recusal is an act of integrity, meaning that you're in the right place. Take it out. Recusal is an act of fairness. Recusal is an act that demonstrates that you're demonstrating that you're in good standing with public business. So a man who is in the government, he wants to say, well, look, I have a conflict of interest, yes, and I do not want that to be brought into the cabinet decision. So you move out of the discourse. That is a good thing. Be careful, Mrs. Bicessa is coming around trying to give you the impression that recusal is a bad thing. Just tell her, listen, madam, recusal is a good thing because it is an act of integrity. Okay? And because that's the kind of undercover thing. Quickly, let me go to the first point with Japan. Thank you, Brian, for making that point. And that point means readiness to work. We demonstrate very early, in those months after we had the election in 2015, and that happened on the 2nd of December 2016, when they told him that NGC has a claim of $6.3 billion. You know what's the result of that? Because of his skills. Remember, he has distinguished himself in commercial law and international law and things like that. So he distinguished himself there, putting his expertise at work. And you know what is happening now? When they renegotiated that particular matter, NGC no longer has a claim to pay of $6.3 billion. Do you know what the consequence of $6.3 billion to pay in China would have been? We did not have money. Whenever you have money, you love money to pay your bills and to satisfy what your requirements are, what you have to do? That's the job of Mr. IMF. So in a big way, in a very solid way, that was one of the very important things that was done for this country to prevent us from, and you know the consequences of going there. The consequences of going there is job loss. Your pension, the old age pension and disability and all that significantly reduced. And your standard of living significantly reduced. That is the consequence of, and that is the first act that endeared me to Mr. Stuart Young. That act that he was able to negotiate so that we no longer have a $6.3 billion for Mitsubishi in the Japanese group. And as I end, let me talk about Brian talking about in Tulapuna. Thank you, Brian, and we will have to have you to come up in Tulapuna again for the next war. In Tulapuna, we had that war. And we walked all through. And I want to tell you something. Those of you who live on the Eastern Corridor, you know what Bulldog Bar is on the Eastern neighborhood? Bulldog Bar. All the people from all strands, all the liners and the drinkers and the go there. I was so shocked. We made the whole of Tulapuna all inside and be coming up the main road. And I missed the Honorable Stuart Young. He went straight to the Bulldog Bar. Coming out with a mortar. And then they say, the boss. And so you talk about a man on the ground? You want to know a man on the ground? Tucked in, as Brian said, all the people around the place. And it was not fake. I tell you, when I look around, so I move into the Bulldog Bar for a few years, and there he is. Somebody give him a mortar, and taking the mortar and talking coming out. So you want to talk about Stuart Young on the ground? He's on the ground. He demonstrated that to the people of Tulapuna. And I'm sure he's going to demonstrate that to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So I thought I will endorse what Brian said because I was there, and I want to start Brian again. I want to say to Brian and Jenny and the others, time will come when we have to send our troops to Tulapuna again. Thank you for that. And Dominic, again, next time that will bring you on board. Let me put you in the board. Yeah, we have to come to Tulapuna when the time is right.
Of course.
So thank you very much for taking that call, Dominic. And the rest of the listeners and callers have a beautiful rest of the day. Thank you very much.
You too, sir. Thank you. All right. I want to tell him. Yachogunda something, right? So he says here, he's accusing me of lying to defend Stuart Young. Mr. LeHunt has brought more finance. You see, when you all come at these generic things, Mr. LeHunt has brought more finance, don't come at no generic nonsense here. Be specific. If you say he brought more finance to Trinidad and Tobago and the party than Robert LeHunt, specify what he did. Tell me where I could find that. Give me the name of the date of the article, the newspaper, where I could find that so I could go and check it and read it for myself. Don't come with no stupidness, no nonsense here about these nebulous things. Oh, he bring more finance and whatnot than Stuart Young. But yet still you can't tell me one. Name one. Go ahead. We waiting. The foolishness. What did I say about Robert LeHunt? Mr. LeHunt was the Minister of Public Utilities. Mr. LeHunt resigned his post as Minister of Public Utilities. Is that not the truth? What did we hear? What was reported? That there was some issue with respect to WASA and Mr. LeHunt wanted to implement some metering system or so on. It was going to cost how much billion of dollars or whatever, and the cabinet rejected it. And it was reported that subsequent to that Mr. LeHunt resigned. If that is not the case, and that is not why he resigned, then Mr. LeHunt should have come out and said, my resignation, this is why I resigned. Did he not? Did he do that? So in the absence of that, we go by what was reported in the newspaper. And if what was reported in the newspaper was inaccurate and incorrect, then Mr. LeHunt, for his own sake and reputation, should have corrected what the newspaper printed. Okay? So miss us with that nonsense. If Mr. LeHunt has desires to be the political leader of the PNM, there is nothing stopping Mr. LeHunt when Dr. Rowley resigns as political leader. Mr. LeHunt can say, I intend to contest the position of political leader and whatever is required to do so, submit his nomination papers for the post of political leader. And anybody else, if Penny wishes to be political leader, she could submit her nomination papers. If even you, Ghetto Gonda, want to be the political leader of the PNM, just like Junior Barak and Mr. Ronald Boynes and Karen Nunes Teixeira did in 2022, submit when on nomination day. Get your form, you go and fill it out, and you take it down to Balize House or wherever you're required to, state that you want to contest the position of political leader, and submit your form. Your name will be on the ballot, and when the polls open, the membership will come, and whoever they think is the best person to serve as political leader, they will vote for. It's as simple as that. Okay? And you keep mixing up the thing. Stuart Young will serve as Prime Minister. Stuart Young is not the political leader of the PNM. When Dr. Rowley submits his resignation, Stuart Young still will not be the political leader of the PNM. The next political leader of the PNM will be decided at the internal polls, one man, one vote. One man, one vote. Okay? The 20 members or the 21 members of the lower house cannot decide who the next leader of the PNM will be. The membership, not the general council, the membership of the PNM who are in good financial standing, even though in 2022 they say even if your dues are not up to date, they allowed you to vote. When that time comes, anybody, so whoever wants to be political leader, show your hat in the ring and let's see what will happen. Okay? It's as simple as that. So all this thing. So I you know what's ridiculous. So everybody else who served as Minister of Energy under this administration, all of them made a contribution. All of them came in with something except Stuart Young. Right? According to Stuart Young brought nothing to the table. He added nothing to the table. He will leave with nothing on the table. He's saying that. Well, you know who's not saying that? The head of Woodside is not saying that. You know who's not saying that? The head of BP, not saying that. You know who's not saying that? The head of Shell is not saying that. Right? Because they would beg to differ with what it is that you say in there. You know who's not saying that? Nicolas Maduro, Delcy Rodriguez. So all the nonsense you put in about Stuart Young and thing and Stuart Young and Rowley send. Why did he send it? Why he didn't send Penny? Why Dr. Rowley didn't send Penny to negotiate? Why he didn't send Foster Cummings to negotiate? And by the way, I see today's Foster Cummings' birthday. So greetings of the day to him, birthday greetings, and may he have an enjoyable one as well. So it had so many other people. Why he didn't send them? I'm just asking you. Since everybody else is so great, why he didn't send Robert LaHunt to do the negotiations? Why? Come now, man. You're coming to tell me nonsense recently about Mr. LaHunt authorized hundreds of millions for this government. Authorized? Hundreds of millions? Really? And so if that is the case, that makes him what? The person who should lead the party? Because of that? Strictly because of that, right? Talk about his accomplishments as Minister of Public Utilities. So he was in a position with the IDB where he was. All right? In a position with the IDB. Okay. And that's your argument. So that alone means that he is preeminently qualified to be the next political leader of the PNM. That's what you're saying? Well, okay. They keep talking about Stuart Young brother and Stuart Young brother and Stuart Young brother. NCB. Right? How many you say LaHunt authorized hundreds of millions of dollars. And I'm pretty sure that's not free money. Okay? It has to be paid back. Well, NCB, over $2.5 billion. Last I checked, billion is more than hundreds of millions. So what else you have? What else you have? So then what is the issue? You tell me about you don't think Mr. LaHunt is... So what's the point of bringing up LaHunt? What is the point of bringing up LaHunt? You were the one who raised it about Mr. LaHunt do more, and I commented based on what you said. So what is the point of bringing up Mr. LaHunt? About I disrespecting LaHunt. What did I say about Mr. LaHunt that is not true? He was Minister of Public Utilities. He resigned. Is that not true? I said I worked in an institution at the same time where Mr. LaHunt was. I will say no more. I said I know other people who would have worked with Mr. LaHunt in a different dispensation, and I will say no more. So what foolishness you're coming to tell me about I disrespecting? You disrespecting Stuart Young whole bloody morning and coming to tell me rubbish? Man, look, folks, we will chat again on Tuesday, right? Because I really can't deal with this foolishness today. I can't. So yes, so those of you who are offering your birthday greetings to Minister Cummings, I'm seeing here he's celebrating his 52nd birthday. Okay. Well, as I said, birthday greetings to him. Yeah, it seems like Ghetto Gonda decided today he wants to replace Winston Bachelor or one of them. Yes, Roxanne, I should have left a long time ago. So we now had this situation. talking about disrespect. Whole time you lying on Stuart Young, he had no competence and he had no ability and he this and he that and all kind of thing and foolishness. But you must come here to malign Mr. Young. You have no facts whatsoever. That is your personal opinion. But as I said before, when the date and time comes for the PNM membership to vote for the next political leader, may the best man or woman win. So all who feel that they have what it takes, throw your hat in the ring, campaign, and you have an opportunity to convince the membership of why you should replace Dr. Keith Rowley. Okay? And again, I repeat, Dr. Rowley is stepping down as Prime Minister and Stuart Young will replace him as Prime Minister. He remains, that is Dr. Rowley, remains the political leader of the People's National Movement. There is no vacancy for leader until such time as Dr. Rowley resigns from that position. And he so informs the General Council, and that triggers the process for an internal election to select a new political leader, right? Dr. Rowley has not told anybody to vote for Stuart Young as political leader. In the same way, as he told them, as he demonstrated yesterday, he didn't tell any of his cabinet colleagues or parliamentary colleagues to vote for Stuart Young or not to vote for Penny, right? He gave them an opportunity to say if that was so, and all of them sat down. So in the same way, when that time comes, if you don't like Stuart Young, that is on you. Don't vote for him. If you want to encourage others not to vote for him, fine. But those who support Stuart Young will get his vote and they will encourage others to support him. Folks, we will chat again on Tuesday morning, God's willing. All right? Enjoy the rest of your Sunday and don't let people send up your blood pressure. Gavin Harrison says, don't waste energy and time on stupidity. Indeed. Thank you, Angela. And Del Joe says, sunlight does kill COVID. Don't study this dummy. Yes, some of them I don't know now, boy. I don't know. But they don't want change at all. Let's tell us the real reason why you don't like Stuart Young is because he's not an African. That's it. Folks, Tuesday.